Okay, we ready? Okay, good evening. Welcome to the annual Candidates Night. It's come around again. Thank you, everybody who's here this evening, from the candidates to everybody behind in the audience and at home. Let's see, my name is Shawn Sullivan. I'll be one of your moderators tonight. Here with me is...
Tammy Wells. Hi.
Yes, and basically, we have three segments to this evening. We have legislative candidates up first. Secondly, we'll do the school committee race. And then lastly, we'll do the city council race. Just a few ground rules before we begin. Each candidate in each segment will be given the opportunity to give a 1-minute introductory statement about themselves. Then, when we get into the Q&A, there'll be 90-second responses, and there'll be warnings along the way, thanks to Emily Sheffield. And what will it be at the 60 and 30-minute mark, second mark? Yes. Okay, so you want to keep an eye on that. If anybody talks over that, we have a cone of silence above you that'll come down and descend on you, and nobody will be able to hear what you're saying. So you definitely want to be succinct. You can turn on your microphone. Ours is different from yours, so hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. The button in front of you, does everybody see that button? Excellent. And let's see, if everybody here can either turn down or turn off their cell phones, that would be appreciated, so that we don't have any ringtones or any dings going off in the next few hours. And, well, okay, we're just about ready to begin. Just so everybody knows, Tammy and I and Zendelle Bouchard worked on the questions together. We are the only three individuals acquainted with those questions, although on social media and through other means, we did invite members of the public to submit questions. And indeed, I think a couple of individuals did. So some of you at home, if you hear a question that is familiar to you, thank you for submitting it to for our consideration. We did not let any of these individuals know if we chose one of their questions. So, okay, it looks like we're ready to begin with the 1-minute intros. If I may, I actually just want to list the candidates as they appear from our left to right. In the Senate District 33 race, we have Republican Matthew Harrington and Democrat Kendra Williams. Welcome. And then over at the House, we have House District 141. We have Democrat John McAdam and Republican Lucas Lanigan. Good evening. And then House District 142, we have Republican Pamela Buck, and we have Democrat Anne-Marie Mastracchio. And lastly, in House District 143, we have Wesley Davis, a Democrat, and Republican Anne-Marie Fredericks. And okay, so now we'll begin with the opening statements. What we're going to do is Mr. Harrington will let you go first, and then when the first question comes around, Ms. Williams, you'll start, and that's how we've done it every year, and it never seemed to create any problems. So that's how we'll be sequencing the questions and answers this evening. So, yes, Mr. Harrington, if you could please start us off with your 1-minute introduction.
Good evening. My name is Representative Matt Harrington. I've had the pleasure of serving the people of Sanford in House District 19 for the last 7 years. I have served on various committees during my time in the legislature, but most recently I am assigned to the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee, which is a committee near and dear to my heart, and my dad was a disabled veteran. I was born and raised here in Maine. I've spent my career in public safety, the last 15 years of which I've been a police officer full-time here in York County. I'm looking forward to having a good night of discussion tonight.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Williams?
Hi. I've often been asked why I want to run for this seat, and I've come to realize that my personal history and experiences have brought me to this place. I was born and raised in Sanford by 2 educators, and my husband Paul and I have raised our 3 children here and consider ourselves fortunate that all 3 live and work in Sanford with their families and our 6 grandchildren. I established 2 successful businesses, Williams Foundations with Paul and Kids Casuals. I then became a clinical social worker and have worked in child welfare and as the director for several child family organizations before starting a private practice specializing in grief and family counseling, from which I've recently retired. I volunteer for several community organizations and have been a member of the Sanford School Committee, Core Building Committee, and I'm serving as the president of the Sanford Schools Legacy Foundation and on the board of Strategies for Stronger Sanford. I believe that all these experiences have given me knowledge and understanding about the people of Sanford and the surrounding communities that will enable me to bring a balanced perspective to the
Here
legislature.
comes that cone.
Thank you very much. Mr. McAdam?
Well, you can call me Jack. Most people know me as Jack. I co-own McDougall Orchards with my wife, Ellen. I work for National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for 36 years. 32 years on multi-million-dollar research vessels, fisheries research vessels. I worked my way up from second mate to captain. I was captain of the Albatross 4 and the Delaware 2 out of Woods Hole, Massachusetts. And in 2005, I was offered a shoreside position with an office over at UNH, and I was the advocate for all the civilian mariners on 18 NOAA vessels homeported around the country. And boy, that's annoying. And some of those were in Hawaii and Alaska. And time's up. Thanks, Emily.
You want to borrow?
Used to be my friend.
You want to borrow 10 seconds from me?
Thank you. Mr. Lanigan?
Well, first I want to thank Shawn and Tammy for doing this, and Zendelle, Emily, all that make this happen. My name is Lucas Lanigan. I am a candidate for the Republican Party for District 141, which entails, I'd like to say, the rural part of Springvale into Shapley and Newfield. West Newfield also included in that. I'm here tonight because I hope to earn your trust and your vote through this candidates night, and to allow me to serve you up in Augusta when the time comes this election season. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Buck?
Good evening. My name is Pamela Buck. I'm here to seek your vote as state representative for our community, District 142. I'm running because I care and I'm concerned about our state economy, future of our residents, our workers, our business owners and their families, the opportunities for education and training not only for our youth but for anyone at any age that wants to be employed. We are all facing the higher cost of living and definitely have a shortage of housing, workforce housing, and also safe housing for our elders. And these issues and more need to be resolved. As a resident of Sanford, a full-time employee, a parent, and a proud grandmother, I personally want to live here in Maine and like to retire here. I cannot see this happening with our current leadership, where practical common sense approaches need to be put in place. So again, I ask for your vote. Once elected, I promise to protect all residents' rights and consider Maine home and like to continue to do so.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mastracchio?
Good evening. I am Anne Marie Mastracchio, and it has been my honor to serve as your mayor for the past 2 years, and I continue to work hard on your behalf. I am running for election to House District 142, a reconfigured House district that I previously represented for 8 years. Prior to my service in the legislature, I was on the town council for 9 years and the Sanford School Committee for 12. My husband Al and I moved to Sanford in 1982 when he opened his optometric practice right up the street from where we still live, and where I worked as his office manager for 20 years. My education and work before we moved to Maine to raise our family was as a public health dental hygienist in the north end of Boston. We have 2 adult children who were educated in the Sanford Public Schools. Our 2 grandsons, Max and Michael, live in Shapley with our son Joseph and daughter-in-law Katie. Joe is an assistant principal at Sanford Middle School, and our daughter Carla lives in North Carolina with her husband Mike, and I'm happy to report we now have another grandson, Teddy, born in the midst of the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davey. I understand I called you Davis when I introduced you. I know very well you're Mr. Davey, so I don't know how that came out there, but Mr. Davey, your introduction, please.
No problem. Happens all the time. So, my name is Wesley Davey. It's Wes for short. I lived in Sanford for 16 years. My wife Jen grew up in Sanford, and we've raised 4 children in the Sanford community, 2 of which are off at college, and I currently have an 8th grader and a 6th grader in Sanford Middle School. I've always tried to be active in the community, whether it's coaching youth teams, volunteering as a referee, helping with the Boxes of Joy program, or the annual food distribution for the backpack program. I've also served 5 years on the Sanford Budget Committee and was the Budget Committee Chair this past year. I'm running to be state representative for District 143 because I want to help represent Sanford at the state level. I'm an experienced operations and project manager, and I want to work with everyone in Augusta to continue to improve quality of life for all Mainers and represent the diverse needs of the population of District 143. I hope I can earn your vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fredericks?
I was born into a large family of 7 kids. It was modest living with no extras. We didn't have anything my parents couldn't afford. There wasn't that reliance on credit like there is today. We had mental illness and addictions in our family, and it wounded us all. I learned quickly that each one of us kids was wired differently, that we each had a different set of knowledge, skills, and abilities. I had to carefully listen, prioritize, and compromise. And reward came for doing a good job. I'm a proud product of public schooling. I attained my master's degree in nursing, another one in public administration. I'm a nurse practitioner and worked in the public sector at the VA caring for veterans. We purchased our property in Sanford in 2016 and opened a small business. Shops are closing here, storefronts are empty, costs of food and fuel are skyrocketing. I am asking South Sanford for your vote. I don't have all the answers, but I know we are worse off today.
Thank you very much. And we're ready to begin. I'll be asking the first question. Just a tip for the audience here at City Hall and also watching at home. Just a reminder that the way the sequencing of the candidates is going to go, in this case, Ms. Williams will be answering first, and Mr. Harrington, who they're both locked in the same race, will be answering last. So when each candidate gives their answers, you might want to just keep in mind who's answering in which race, just so that there's no confusion there. What's that? Okay, awesome. All right, so here we go. First question. Ready? What is your personal stance on abortion? What would be your guiding principles if called upon to vote on a bill seeking to further restrict access to abortions? And Ms. Williams, please start us off.
Well, you know, each of us make our own health care decisions based on advice and guidance from our medical provider, and I believe that reproductive care is health care. It's as simple as that. So I think that the patient, and only the patient, has a right to make decisions on their health care based on their own values, their own circumstances, and their own beliefs.
Thank you very much. Mr. McAdam?
Yeah, I also believe that a woman's reproductive health is between her and her physician and no one else except maybe her partner. Any legislation that came up to restrict that, I would vote against.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is passing quickly so far. Mr. Lanigan?
Yes, thank you. First off, I want to say I'm probably the least qualified person to even answer this question because it is between a woman and their doctor. And I'm thankful that Maine has a law that went in, I think it was in 96 or 99 when Governor McKean was in office, which allows up to a certain amount. There is restrictions on it, and there is the availability to it. So we're fortunate as the state of Maine to be in that position. If I am elected, I will not be asking for legislation to change anything to more restriction, and I will not be supporting any changes. We have way too many other issues on the table right now for Mainers, and luckily we already have this law solidified. And the old saying goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it's been working for Maine, and I'd like just to see it continue on the way it is, and us work for the Maine families, getting some more money back into their pockets and lowering taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lanigan. Ms. Buck?
Thank you. So abortion, that's a very complicated and delicate issue. I believe abortion needs to protect the rights of the mothers and the unborn child. Maine is a very balanced state compared to other states, and we really preserve the rights of our lives of our mother and our unborn child. So compared to other states, we're more balanced and more forward-thinking, and which I'm glad to hear, because abortion also concerns with science and database material, and I always stand behind science and database, even though my personal opinion might be different. I want to go for the rights for all and not just take my own, what my beliefs are. And I'll tell you one thing, I don't believe that birth control should be used for birth control. So I don't believe abortion, I repeat that, should be used for birth control. But again, I'll stand behind the guidelines that the state of Maine has currently. And again, I really think we're very fortunate to live in a balanced state. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mastracchio?
There is absolutely no doubt that I support a woman's right to choose her own reproductive care. If she wants to do that with the help of her physician and her partner, that is fine as well, but it is her body to do with as she chooses. I feel that very strongly. And I would absolutely not vote to restrict care in the future should a bill come forward. And I have a record in the past, when I served in the legislature, there were numerous bills that came forward that I voted against.
Thank you. Mr. Davey?
Yeah, I believe that people have agency to make those choices, so I agree that it should be a woman's right to choose, especially what happens to their own body. I believe that Maine has some good legislation in place already, so I wouldn't be looking to make any changes to those. If it came to any kind of changes for legislation for restriction, I think we should change and focus more on education and offering support services for those who are in need. Somebody who's pregnant and scared and doesn't know what they're going to do, they should have all the education of what their options are and what's in front of them so they can make the best decision for themselves.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks?
So I am a clinical provider, I am a nurse practitioner, and I would never illegalize abortion. Healthcare is very personal and it's complex. And there are situations where abortion should be considered, although few. So I agree with candidates Lanigan and Buck as well. We are very fortunate to live in the state of Maine, and I would not change the law in any way.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Harrington?
So as everyone here pretty much said, the abortion law has been codified since Roe versus Wade. It was codified by Governor McKernan in the early 90s. I have a track record in the legislature of not submitting or supporting legislation that would restrict a woman's ability to receive this procedure. Current Maine law prohibits abortion after viability, and our laws should keep pace with modern medicine, but that is between a woman and her doctor.
Thank you very much. One down. Tammy?
Mr. McAdam. If the need for budget cuts arises this winter, what would you cut and why?
I haven't even seen the budget yet, so I don't know what to cut. I don't know. That's a confusing question.
Would you like me to clarify?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right, yeah, if we can clarify. We don't necessarily mean the fiscal year budget that's coming. Basically, this is a question intended to reveal a candidate's priorities. So if we're heading towards the kind of economic times that indeed are being forecasted, and you find yourself in a position where cuts need to be made, and the legislature is sure enough exploring where, what would be first areas that you would consider for cutting and suggesting and working on?
Again, I've never been in the legislature, so I don't know what the state budget looks like, so I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, there are a lot of things I'm concerned about, but, you know, unless you show me a budget, a line item budget, I can't really answer that question.
Okay.
Okay, that's his answer.
Mr. Lanigan?
Thank you. So one of the things I'd probably do is I'd look at is, are we going to be able to keep our seniors in their homes? Are we going to be able to take care of the opioid addiction problem that we have? those are funding mechanisms that I think that are essential to keep, the homestead exemptions. Those things are important to keep in our budget. The things that we can do away with is the wasteful spending, the inefficiency of our government. There's many layers of bureaucracy that we could eliminate through peeling through the budget, peeling through different departments. I know free college is great for everybody, but unfortunately, a free college has to go for some young, able, willing working bodies in our state, and it means keeping someone in their house that has served their community, have paid their time, and it means them being able to stay there and be part of the community. I'm going to choose on that side. I think we have to take a compassionate and empathetic view of the budget as we do it, but when tough choices are to be made, I can guarantee you that I am willing to make those tough choices. Thank you so much.
Can I
Ms.
continue?
Bach,
Hi.
if the need for budget cuts were to arise this winter, what would you cut and why?
Well, winter is almost upon us, and the cost of living has skyrocketed. So the first thing I'm going to tell you, and kind of flip it, what I wouldn't cut is any assistance for our seniors or individuals on a fixed income. And also, I don't know what all the budget entails, but at the same time, I would make sure that if we were to cut something, it would deal with taxes, property taxes. We really need a different structure for taxes. It totally needs to be revamped. The homestead exemption, for example, is just one thing. It's not making it affordable. That's just not going to basically help us stay in our home. Again, I know it's already mentioned, but the opioid crisis, that's something I would not cut. With so many people actually dying right now because of it, we need to make sure that we're the safety of not only the people living here, but the people that have issues with substance abuse. We need to address that. And another thing, I'm doing it flipping, but I would not cut is any economic development. It's just so important. If we it's pretty simple. If we don't have any businesses here, we don't have any workers, we don't have any state. So I really think we need to push more for economic development, and then I'll work on the things that I will not cut. Thank you.
Ms. Mastracchio?
Thank you. I actually have been in a situation where we've had to cut budgets, where we went back in January in a new administration, or in an old administration and in just a new session, and the supplemental budget had to be passed because we weren't going to be able to balance the budget, which is in our Constitution that we will have a balanced budget. I think the issue is going to be this year that we're going to have a surplus. So the question will be what to do with the surplus more than anything. And my priorities are what they always are. Taking care of families in a time of high inflation. That might mean increasing some of the benefits that we can give for HE assistance or for childcare, or the kinds of things that will make people's lives a little bit easier in a time of high inflation. I will not support cutting revenue sharing or funding for education. It took us a long time to get back to the point where it was at 55% for education and fully funding the 5% that was required by state law. That directly impacts property tax. So I think the question is going to be in January, what are we going to spend the extra money in? And maybe what we should do is try to figure out ways that we can mitigate the effects of inflation on our citizens, and put a little bit more in the rainy day fund, which is almost at $1 billion right now, and that should get us through any difficult times.
Thank you. Mr. Davey?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll kind of start off the same way. So as far as what I wouldn't cut, any program that provides assistance to help fight inflation right now, I would be really hesitant to cut. And anything that allows for Mainers to see a little bit of relief from the growing prices, those are things I don't believe that we absolutely could cut. Healthcare the same way. I wouldn't do anything with that. Anything that promotes housing for cheaper housing for Mainers also would be in there, as well as education. Definitely would not cut anything that related to education, because I believe those are the important things and things in the long run that will help us get through. As far as what I would cut, I'm similar to what Mr. McAdams said. I haven't seen the budget. This is my first time running. So what I would recommend is that we look for programs that may not be providing the results that we're expecting, and potentially suspend those programs for this time or see what can be cut that way. Also, look for excess. Any place we can find excess layers, money that could be spent in other places, I would cut those as well.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks?
When there's not enough money to pay for all the goods and services that you want, you start to make cuts and you act efficiently and you take a look at what's the utilization. And that's the first thing I'd look at is what are we spending now and on what? And what can we do differently? You know, are there services that we could perform remotely versus going to a certain department? Are there departments that we consolidate so that we minimize on personnel and shift them into other areas? I'd look at things like York County transportation, utilization. What's the cost of that and who's using it? I'd be looking at the DMV, I'd look at auto registration. Could any of those processes be done online instead of going to those sites for engagement of services? Again, looking to do things differently. Think about it differently. If you're at home, you shut the lights off quicker, you turn the temperature down, you don't make the runs to the places you ordinarily would be driving to, you start to same dollars. Are there any state properties that we could sell off and regain money for this, and so that we don't have to make cuts in areas that we don't want to cut?
Thank you. Mr. Harrington?
So since the question is what would you cut from the budget, I would say the biggest difference between the current administration and the past administration is the number of open positions that are kept open in the budget as favors to unions. So I think going after those open positions that aren't currently being filled would be the first thing I would cut. But then obviously prioritizing spending. I don't think it's any question where we're going to spend any additional revenue. I think we're going to have to do a lot with heating fuel assistance this winter. So we should have a lot more money in the budget, but the last legislature spent quite dramatically, so we won't have as much. Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Well, as we all know, Maine, unlike the federal government, has to have a balanced budget, and I personally believe that's a good thing. And having run businesses and having been doing budgets for programs I've been a director in, and having been on the school committee, I really get that when cuts need to be made, they need to be made, and what you need to do is just look at everything and see what would be the least painful, or what are the things that there could be other alternatives to help as many as people as possible and get things done. So they're difficult, but they're necessary. And I would also, as someone there said, maybe it was Mr. Davey, that I would look at some of the programs and make sure that all the programs that are in place, especially ones that have been in place for a while, are they evidence-based, and how are they doing?
Any specifics at the stage? Any specifics at this stage that you would eye? Can you repeat that? Any specifics that you would eye at this stage?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Are there any specific items you would look at this stage?
Again, I think I would just look at, you know, I definitely don't want to cut services that people need, but sometimes there are things within organizations that aren't as efficient as they should be, and maybe it's time for new ways of doing that. So taking a close look, is the money being spent effectively?
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lanigan is going to start us off with question number 3. It's a general question. What in Maine needs to change, and how would you work to change it as a legislator? Mr. Lanigan.
So I mean, I wish I had more than 90 seconds. So one of the things is we have the 3rd highest food costs in the nation. That's crippling our families right now with inflation. Our fuel tax is one of the highest in the nation. I would work on that. I would work with the PUC to reduce our electricity costs and energy costs for both businesses and residents. Businesses rely on affordable energy so they can run efficiently and effectively, so they can hire. I would right-size our state government spending and be very well-balanced getting through this recession. I would look at eliminating the bottle tax. That literally, you can go buy a 24-pack of water for under $2, and by the time you add the tax onto it, it's more than double that. And right now, every dollar counts. So I think what we need to do is really look at wasteful programs that we have that are not allowing our residents to provide for their families. The other thing I would look at is renovating our and I say renovating, not destroying, but our welfare system. We've created this social safety net that is actually just a net. It traps people in it, and it doesn't allow them to get up and above with their head above water. There's just a cliff when they get there. So I'd really like to focus on that, and I also think that would put more money into our budget, and it will enable our residents that do have to rely on that to move up and be better their lives and enjoy it. Thank you. Time up.
Thank you. Ms. Buck, what in Maine needs to change? And as a legislator, what would you do to work to change it?
Goodness, I'm going to get this right one time. One thing is many things important. One, first thing that comes to mind due with inflation and the COVID aftermath is affordable housing. Individuals can't afford houses or rents. You want people to come and build up our economy, and there's no homes to be bought. It's just skyrocketed and not affordable. That's one thing we need to get grips on, from either building more affordable workforce housing, and we also have our seniors and people on fixed incomes are being priced out of living here. I can speak of that. I also assist in taking care of my father, who's 87 years old and a Korean War veteran, and he has to live with me instead of finding housing, because it's just crazy right now, the market. Another thing I want to mention is education and training. I worked at Job Corps, I worked at the Career Center, and I understand we need education and training to match jobs that are jobs that are here, but future jobs. And it's really important. Everybody needs a job, not just our youth. We have people of all ages that want to work, and we got to make sure that we have training for them as well. Another thing in 10 seconds I'll try to hit is maybe I'll end it later, is community development. There's one thing, Maine is the highest cost place to live as well to do business, and that's another issue I'd like to tackle. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mastracchio?
I'm going to approach this a little bit differently and a little more globally and not specifically, I guess. In my service in the legislature, I've always been really impressed with the quality of person that has agreed to serve. And what that did for me was to make me look at the state in a different way and accept that we really are many Maines, but Maine is a small state. It may seem big, but it's small. So what I think that Maine needs to do is we need to see ourselves as that whole working together and not working against each other, north against south. And we need to embrace the fact that Maine is changing, and that has been really difficult for people to do, because you see it when we attack asylum seekers and look at what they're taking away from others. I am a firm believer that we all need to be in this together, that we're not going to do it with just the old Mainers, that we need the new Mainers. We need all of us working together to make this the place that it can be. I think we saw through the pandemic that this became a place where we had people dying to come here. They wanted to be here because they felt safe. We were doing things right. And I guess I want people to be more positive and look at this in a way that working together in the legislature, that's the kind of attitude I want to promote. I'm not going to give you a list of all the things we do wrong. I'm going to tell you what we do right.
Thank you. Mr. Davey?
Thank you. So a few things. First, education. I believe with the just coming out of the pandemic that there have been gaps identified where certain regions based on low income are showing that the gap has widened between those that have more money, communities that have more money. So I believe we need to identify those areas, identify the needs, and do what it takes to help those students catch up so that they can succeed in high school and even beyond. Another one that was mentioned already is housing. I think housing is a huge concern. Everybody, that's a nationwide thing, but in Maine, we definitely haven't had the correct number of houses built over the last several years to meet the need, and that goes for rentals as well. A lot of people looking for affordable housing, and if you can't find that, you're not going to attract the youth to fill the jobs. It has a real domino effect. So that's another item that needs to be resolved. And then the last one, the opioid crisis. That is another item where I believe we should really focus on. I think we need to gather more data, target those areas where we're seeing it to be more prevalent. And then I also believe that we should be looking for those kind of drugs that would be more addictive ahead of time to try and get in front of some of those things.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks?
Well, from talking with the people of Sanford, and specifically with the director of the Sanford Regional Airport, I've come to learn that the state of Maine has an excise tax for aircraft owners, which the state of Massachusetts does not, the state of New Hampshire does not. And I think this is ripe for change. And why? Because if we could abolish that excise tax for aircraft owners in Maine, or at least decrease it, there'd be opportunity right here in Sanford for people who own, jetliners or corporate owners of jets to hangar their plane here in Sanford. And when you hangar a plane, certainly you're paying for rental of that space, but they're all services that are collateral to that aircraft. You'd have taxi service, food services, maintenance services, all these workers, new jobs coming to Sanford. And then the opportunity to bring added commerce right to our community here in Sanford, simply by adjusting that excise tax that the state of Maine has on aircraft.
Thank you. Mr. Harrington?
There are certainly a lot of issues facing the state. Over the last 6 to 8 months, I've been touring many businesses in the district, and overwhelmingly the thing I hear between visiting businesses and knocking on doors is a major workforce shortage. Businesses being able to recruit and retain skilled workers, and in many cases not even skilled workers, just being able to find someone to wash dishes or to cook in a restaurant. We need to really prioritize the trades, I think, getting skilled workers to be available for these businesses. The Mills administration canceling the workforce requirements to receive public assistance. It's my belief that if you're an able-bodied person, that you should be working, and we should reinstate those work requirements if you're on public assistance.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Ms. Williams?
Child welfare. That, of all the issues that drove me to want to run for this, it was watching the progress that is finally being made to fix our broken system. And we have long ways to go. We've got too many children dying in this state from abuse and neglect, and also kids that are remaining in homes with abuse and neglect. I don't blame the people. I worked in the child welfare system. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. So it's not the staff, it's not the people who are committed, it's not the foster parents. What we need to do is rebuild the system, and we need to start with prevention. Another job I had was running the home visiting program for first-time parents for York County. We would have about 200 families enrolled, and you would not believe the successes I saw, especially learning that, our children, when they're young, that is when their brain has the most development in their whole life. And what we're doing now in the current child welfare system is we're letting them go back and forth while their parents have a lot of opportunity to get it together. And I'm all for supporting parents, but these kids don't have time to wait.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. McAdam?
Housing. People mention that. I'm on the Sanford Planning Board. We've approved, I think, at least 3 separate apartment complexes in town. Some of them have started already, one down by the Rotary, and they're all market rate. I think there needs to be some sort of incentive so that the developers will actually put aside some of the apartments for low-income people. I'm concerned about PFAS on farmland. I know Maine, Maine is doing some experiments to see what can be grown on soils that are contaminated with PFAS. I'm concerned about protecting farmland because with climate change, we're going to be able to grow more produce and longer growing season. Food insecurity. I mean, Maine, oh, geez, 30. The Secretary of Agriculture was just up here yesterday, I believe, because we have approved feeding all of our students in schools free lunch, which is something that kids need in order to learn. And there are a lot of seniors, and time's up.
Thank you very much. Question number 4, Tammy.
Ms. Bach, you get this one first. Lobstermen have had a challenging year with the federal government's attempts to further regulate them, and with a group out west calling for people to boycott buying and eating lobster. Should the legislature be involved in these matters? If so, how? If not, why not?
The state legislature should definitely be involved. They're our economy. So anything involving the livelihood of our lobstermen, our farmers, or any with our natural resources, definitely we need to be involved. So there's a lot of things I'm still unaware of on both sides, but one thing I can promise once elected as a state representative is I would make sure I understand both sides on how it is affecting, also speak to the lobstermen and speak to everybody involved with their industry before making any decisions to make sure it's balanced and fair for all. One thing, just trying to think, so we also have like an imbalance, like we have all of our natural resources, like our farm and fishermen, and it's too bad that we don't combine that with other type of businesses going forward to make us more economic development. I guess that's all I can say about that right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mastracchio.
So the lobster industry is one of our biggest industries, and I think we absolutely need to support them. And I do think that there is a compromise at some point between the whales and the lobster fishing industry. So I'm hoping that the Attorney General will join the suit to try to stop these things from going into effect. I know the legislature will be involved, there's just no doubt in my mind, because it is such a big industry. I think our lobster industry does everything right. They've been involved from the very beginning of regulating this, and I think that the big problem that they're having now is it feels like it's been taken out of their hands, and I absolutely understand that. And as a legislator, I would be working with the lobster industry to fix the problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Davey.
Yeah, I agree. I think the state legislature should be involved. You know, these are Maine residents. We need to protect the livelihood of those who work and live here. And we can definitely get more facts to see where the middle ground is, see if there's other ways that we can help to support outside of these regulations. You know, as far as, I guess I'm not a lobsterman myself, so I can't speak from that standpoint, but I definitely think that we should support the lobstermen. I think that we should look for, like I said before, any way that can help save their livelihood while also looking to protect other species. So I would say we definitely need to be involved.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks.
I too agree that we should stay involved and protect the lobstermen, protect the Maine lobstermen. It's a family-owned industry. It's not a corporate run. I believe they've listened, these lobstermen have listened to the concerns of the right whales being snagged in their nets, and they've come through with quick release devices. They strive to comply with everything they can possibly do, and know that they're shoveling the costs out of their pockets to comply with the issues. And yet they're still red listed. There's almost like a smear campaign that's, that they're fighting against. So they need us to really defend their livelihood, but don't kid yourselves. Everyone in the country, in this United States, is familiar with the Maine lobster. It's shipped everywhere. So we need to stand by them and support them. I agree.
Thank you. Mr. Harrington.
The legislature and the governor's office needs to be doing everything in their power to tell the federal government to butt out of that industry. These hardworking men and women just want to go to work and provide for their families. These are multi-generational lobster men and women who just want to go out and do their job. We have not had an issue with the whales since the early 2000s. They've changed their gear multiple times to address this issue. It is no longer an issue. Furthermore, there's a lot of issues with offshore wind power and the benefits that they're receiving, and I forget what they call it, but the percentage of errors that they're allowed to make in the wind industry is not even remotely close to what the lobstermen are facing in the scrutiny. So I think it's largely a political issue, and they need to be left alone.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
I agree with everyone else. We should absolutely be involved in protecting the lobster industry, and I agree with Mr. Harrington that we need to have the governor and also our congressional representatives involved. My husband lobstered out of Wells Harbor for 15 years because I guess he didn't think doing concrete foundations was hard enough. But I learned a lot during that time, too. And what I did learn is that lobstermen really police themselves, and they kept having to do different rules, the size of the lobster, or notching them, or throwing back the ones with eggs. And I would say, honestly, not all lobstermen are as honest as they need to be, and they don't always get along well with each other, but they really policed themselves, and because they know that the sustainability of the industry depends on them doing that. And I agree, too, with the others. There's been no evidence that the ropes or there have been any right whales killed because of lobstermen. So I definitely think we need to be involved and advocate as strongly as possible.
Thank you. Mr. McAdam.
As I said before, I worked for NOAA for 36 years. When I was on the research vessels, I was more like an Uber driver. I took National Marine Fisheries scientists out, took them where they wanted to go. We didn't do much research on lobsters, but we did do a lot of research on whales. I support the lobstermen. There are some closures in the Gulf of Maine which confuse me because they're put into effect in the wintertime. And from what I've heard from some of the scientists, most of the right whales are down in Georgia frolicking in the warm waters in the wintertime, not up here in the Northeast. So I don't quite understand that. I mean, I have seen some whales that have been entangled, but I don't know if it's from, I don't think it was lobster gear. I mean, there are lobster gears out on the Northeast Peak in 600 fathoms of water. It's just incredible, some of these guys out there fishing that deep. And there are long lines and gill nets, the things that these whales could get entangled with. So again, I'm with the lobstermen. I'd like to see more information on this because apparently there's not a lot of entanglements due to lobster gear, especially inshore.
Thank you. Mr. Lanigan.
Yes, first is I would like to take a bipartisan approach to this because our lobstermen, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle they are on, they define Maine. You haven't met a tourist that has come here that hasn't had a lobster roll. You haven't been to a fancy restaurant outside of Maine that doesn't have Maine lobster served on it as a delicacy. It's an important fabric of our future as well as our past, and I don't want to lose that. It concerns me, though, is the track record of the administration and those serving in the past 2 years with COVID. There was numerous businesses that they had no hesitation of shutting down, social clubs that raised money that benefited community members and communities. Our schools were shut down. Our kids' education was taken away from them. So I hope that it can be a bipartisan thing, but I can only go by what just happened to myself, my wife, my friends, my family, you know, everybody here in Maine. They shut us all down as quick as possible and without the knowledge. So I just hope that we can do the research, do it the right way, and give the lobstermen the benefit of the doubt, not like we received as business owners and parents when COVID came through. Thank you.
There we go. We are now halfway through our questions and doing very well with time. So here's question number 5, and Ms. Mastracchio, if you could start us off. Here we go. In your opinion, should electric utilities be privately or publicly owned in Maine? And please explain your answer.
Well, I'll tell you, I have not been happy with CMP at all. I think that they have definitely not done what they should have done in terms of solving a lot of their problems when in billing and over the years. And honestly, I can remember having a discussion in my last term in the legislature that if CMP didn't watch it and it became an issue that went to the people of Maine would be voting for a public to take over that utility. And quite frankly, I think that's probably where that question needs to go. And I would probably support it. Even though I'm not sure that government is the best place to run things, I think it's one of those utilities that we have not been able to count on CMP. I think, though, the question really is, what would that cost the state, and how would we do that? And so sometimes when you have referendum questions, you have to be careful about the way that it's written and how it comes before the legislature, because you can end up with a lot of unintended consequences. So I guess I would have to wait to see what that question was when it came in front of the legislature, and whether the legislature would have to put a competing question forward.
Thank you. Mr. Davey?
Sure. So this is a tough question for sure, because I think that you can definitely have it as a private company as long as it's serving the community. When it comes to things like utilities, there's not a lot of competition, so people don't have a lot of choices, a lot of options necessarily. So I think there needs to be regulation to make sure that there's no price gouging, make sure that the rates stay in line, make sure that it's affordable for the citizens who use these utilities. But I believe you can have that balance with a private entity. The biggest piece is anytime you have these utilities and you know that people are dependent on those, that it has to be well regulated and well managed. If not, supply and demand could definitely put a lot of people without power, put a lot of people without heat, put them in bad situations. So I believe it can stay private, but I do believe that there needs to be regulation by the government to make sure that it stays affordable for the citizens of Maine.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks?
I agree it's a tough question, and it should be before the people to decide. Personally, I think smaller government is better. I believe in capitalism. If a utility company were privately owned in the state, I would hope there'd be more than one, so no monopoly would kind of hold us hostage. I would hope there'd be great attention on the board of directors for such a utility. But long and short of it is, I'm looking for shrinking government, not expanding government. I'm looking for consolidation, efficiencies. I do believe in capitalism, free market, and competition, healthy competition, which can drive costs down. But all in all, the long and short, I would be proposing, put it to the people and let the people decide.
Thank you. Mr. Harrington?
So I 100% think it should stay in the private sector. The government does not run things overly efficiently. Unfortunately, I think this referendum question is coming down as a question of people's satisfaction in CMP. which unfortunately is not very high right now, but we should not be making public policy based on emotion. Like I said, the government does not run things very well, and we should definitely keep it private sector.
Thank you. Ms. Williams?
I would say right now, I'd be hesitant, if that was on the ballot right now, I would vote against having it go to the government, only because I don't think we have enough information. I think it needs to be vetted more. I think the public needs to get accurate information. As soon as you start putting something on the ballot, you're going to have companies coming back and forth with commercials that people are going to believe or not believe, and what we need as citizens is accurate information, because this, if it gets put to the government and taken away from being private, number one, it's going to be very, very expensive for the state to take that on, but we're also going to need to make sure that people know what they're doing when it happens. We just can't afford to do this willy-nilly. It takes a lot, and I don't see it happening really quickly.
Thank you very much. Mr. McAdam?
Well, I think we're not just talking about CMP, but Versant also. What is the cost of buying those two companies out? And I'm not sure that that's the right thing to do. I haven't seen a lot of information on what the total cost would be, and I'm concerned about who's going to run this, especially if it's government. And I think if we look at Puerto Rico recently, they have a private company that runs their utilities down there, and that's a total mess. So I guess I'd have to see more information, but I'm not on board with it right now.
Thank you. Mr. Lanigan?
I would be 100% against such a large entity becoming under state control. It's not how we do things in Maine, and it's not how we even do things in the United States. This is a private company. I'd like to hear what the grievances are. Are they customer service? Is it rates? Is it reliability to the house? From what I can see, I know a lot of linemen, a lot of IBEW workers that work on these lines, and they're very passionate at their job, and they give it their all. They work 16-hour days if that's what the emergency calls for. They're working to keep our lights on. If it's a customer service thing, we have the Public Utility Commission to exercise some leverage on them on regulation that we might need to do for us. I also would like to remind people that at home that our electricity costs aren't going up because CMP is bad at managing their company. Our costs are going up because bad policy in Augusta around solar, wind, and other things. I'm all for solar power. I was part of the solar project here in Sanford. It does work if it's done right. But what we're doing is we're supplementing those projects with our electricity bills. So I would peel back those layers first, and then I would see what we could come up with there, and then give the people of Maine the right information to make the right decision.
Ms. Buck?
It's hard to go at the end when everybody answered the question, but I will try to add to that. Electricity is an essential need. So you're playing with an idea of our electricity being handed to public through our government. I can't see proof that our government has handled other business in a valuable way that I feel comfortable that I'd let it go to our government. And that's not, to me, the role of the government. So, and a question I would have is, CMP is one of our private entities that services us for electricity. Why aren't other companies coming through? What are the barriers other people, other private agencies are not coming into the state of Maine, which I think I know, but at the same time, I think it's important to see what other avenues we have. And again, I would go with the vote of the people, but information I have right now, I think all electricity should be handled through a private entity, not through our government.
Thank you. That wraps up question 5.
I lost my place there for a minute. Mr. Davey, if elected, you will take office during the winter. What do you see as your responsibility as a legislator to those living in tents this winter season in cities and towns across the state, and not just the big towns? What can be done short-term?
That's another good question. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's important to make sure that people are taken care of. For those that are living in tents, whatever the situation may be, they definitely need our assistance. So it could be for many reasons. There could be those where it's mental health related, and those, we need to make sure that those services are available for those people that are in need. But we need to make sure that people stay warm, that there are adequate shelters that they can go to, heat sources that they can have access to. You know, unfortunately, this is a problem that is rising across the nation, and not just in Maine, and we need to be more creative about how we're handling these situations. But we definitely need to make sure that they can stay warm. We need to make sure that those people are taken care of. If we can look for buildings that aren't in use that could be used as potential temporary shelters. We could look at, any portable heat sources that could be used, or warmer clothing that could be donated, blankets, those kind of things that will help keep them warm through this time if shelter's not available. But yeah, I agree, we need to make sure that we take care of these people.
Thank you. Ms. Fredericks.
Well, the state does do, they perform an annual audit of homelessness. There's a count that's done. And I hope that the prior count which was done has been assessed and analyzed for what the needs are from last year. Because if there's a growth in the number of homelessness, we need to optimize shelter beds, and we need to rely a little more on our mental health liaisons. Now we have, police officers that have dual roles. We have case managers, and I think going to the initial information is, we have an idea of what our homelessness population is right now today. We shouldn't fall into December, with degrees falling 30 below and then scratching our heads and saying, what do we do now? We should be looking at these audit reports and coming up with some planning at that time, and then optimizing shelter beds, seeing if utilization is the same in all areas. Maybe Aroostook County has a lower number of shelter beds that are being utilized, and maybe we're using more of them here, and maybe we only need to shuttle by way of buses to other shelters. I'm saying we take a look at the current services that we have in existence, we look at the need, and we try to balance it.
Thank you. Mr. Harrington.
So I think, beyond even folks in tents, we need to have resources to keep all Mainers warm this winter. I think, obviously, most homeless people are suffering from mental health and substance abuse issues. So we need to make sure we have the resources available for those two issues. In my professional career, I've come across many homeless individuals, many of whom are out there by choice. Although many of us can't fathom that, there are folks, due to their mental illness and substance abuse issues, are homeless by choice. But we obviously need to have the resources available to keep them warm, but not just them, all Mainers this winter.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
Could you repeat the question again?
Sure. If elected, you will take office this winter. What do you see as your responsibility as a legislator to those living in tents this winter season in towns and cities across the state? What can be done short-term?
Well, it's a huge issue, and I think it bothers all of us that people are homeless, and a lot of it is too. The sad thing is we're seeing people who are working. Sometimes you see working families that are homeless because there is, just not available affordable housing for them, or any housing at all. I have to say, I attended a meeting here a few weeks ago, hosted by the Sanford Housing Authority, I believe, and several of you were here. And I was encouraged because what I saw is that several organizations, all of them with different missions, York County Community Action, the school department, Caring Unlimited, Obviously, the Housing Authority, and there was one, York County, yeah, I'm missing one. But what I found really different is that they are all collaborating with one another. And so they talked about how they all have each other kind of on speed dial. So when there's an issue, they're talking to each other about a particular person or a particular family, and they're working together to help that. So I would like to see more of that happen in communities. And I'm also encouraged by the things, it was the police department that I left out, and that was a big role. And I'm encouraged by what the police department is doing right now and gathering a multidisciplinary team.
Thank you. Mr. McAdam?
I guess addiction is the big thing with the homeless community. And I agree with Kendra that some people just can't afford housing right now. So that's a huge issue. I don't know how to correct that in the January meeting if I get elected. I guess I'll end it there. I just don't know. And Kendra said, you know, there was a meeting here a couple weeks ago, and we are working on homeless in Sanford. As far as the rest of Maine goes, I don't know. I hope the state legislator is working on that.
Thank you. Mr. Lanigan?
Thank you. So first off I mean, we have to be compassionate about like whatever the solution is or whatever approach that we take. And we have to understand that not everybody walks the world in the same shoes, and we all have different paths that we take. It's such a tough thing. I mean, even thinking about it, I recall when I was on the council, when Mayor Cody was here, we actually really tackled this program. Detective Smalls was going out and going out to homeless camps in our community. A lot of people don't have IDs, so they can't get the health insurance, so they can't get the mental health. So it's connecting those dots and creating those resources. Governor LePage created a grant program that we utilized here in Sanford, allowing an evidence-based opioid program. So if it was drug-related while they were out on the street, we had resources to be able to help those people. And the success stories, I mean, they'll bring tears to your eyes. I mean, it's really amazing when you meet someone out in the woods and they have nothing, and then all of a sudden, like just by having some people that care about them, being able to walk them through the path that will get them to the light, it works. It does work. So we need to fund that. We need to invest in it because it's best for everybody. So that's thank you.
Well, I work at a homeless shelter, York County Shelter Program that services York County. We have a homeless shelter for men and women. We have a homeless shelter for families, and we also have a substance abuse program. They are all connected, meaning homelessness, drug addiction, mental health, and the cost of living. I think it's interesting. Sometimes I go to work, and sometimes we look like a teen center. Sometimes we look like a nursing home. But there's so many reasons how homelessness is started. One of the things it's really important that we definitely need is accessibility to meaningful mental health services. We need affordable housing, and we need a detox center. Those are some of the things we definitely need to address for homelessness. And yes, and one of the things that Sanford already has, and I think it's a great example, is we have a mental health unit with Sanford Police right now, where you have 2 specialized trained police officers and 1.5, I don't know how you have 1.5, but 1.5 social workers that's been funded through the state and the federal agency. So Eric Small was the first police officer that was trained, and it was interesting, it's rotated. So that's one of the things that's new, about 4 years here in Sanford. So, and I think that's really important, but homelessness is very important, and I have to stand up for Sanford. They connected the dots with other agencies and other, like York County Community Action, our program, to make sure that everybody knows that homelessness is an issue and we can fix it.
Thank you. Ms. Mastracchio?
I do think Sanford is doing a really good job at addressing some of the issues that create people to be unhoused. I think that what we've learned is that there are people, no matter what we do, who want to remain in their tents or not in a homeless shelter even. So for me, that issue is, what are we going to do with that group of people? And I know that the governor's office has recently, along with, I think, Maine State Housing, have formed groups that will meet of all of the providers, for example, in York County, and they will meet on a monthly basis, and they will discuss by name the people. Okay, so what's happened to Mr. Smith? Is he still there? Does he need that? I think one of the other things that we need warming centers. We need resource centers for these individuals to be able to get some of the help they need, and maybe we can get them to the point where we can get them to agree to be housed. However we do that. I also think that we have a unique opportunity in Alfred with the York County Shelter that has an extra 200 acres, because the truth is we don't have enough beds for homeless shelters. So my guess, what I would do as a legislator is I would try to figure out what are the barriers to expanding that shelter in Alfred, because I think that would help to a large degree.
Thank you.
Okay, question number 7. I'll apologize in advance for the long wind-up, but I assure you at the end of what I'm about to say will be some questions. We just felt we needed to provide some context to this one's unusual, at least, here in Sanford when we do this annual forum. Here we go. And Ms. Fredericks, you'll be the first to answer. As we all know, there was not a peaceful transfer of power after the 2020 presidential election. Indeed, Maine was among other states that had beefed up security around the Capitol in Augusta in the days leading up to the inauguration in January of 2021. If elected, this is why we're asking, if elected, you will be in office during and after the 2024 presidential election. So this question to us feels fair, relevant, necessary. And so the questions are, there's 2. Do you have any issues with the 2020 presidential election, whether it's the way in which it was conducted nationally or the results that were certified? And secondarily, how do you vow to carry yourself as a legislator during the upcoming presidential campaign? Ms. Fredericks, please.
As far as the 2020 presidential election, I wish there were voter ID. I wish there were a way to show and prove who we are when we vote, so that there's no call for question later, so we're not performing an arm wrestle about the authenticity of a vote. I believe every person's voice should be heard. For those people that choose to vote, I believe they should exercise that right, and again, have their voice be heard. And if we're uncertain of, did the deceased place a vote? Did non-citizens place a vote? Did your vote get casted? Leaving that speculation cast doubt in all of our minds, and we shouldn't have that. As Americans, we should be crystal clear on having our votes being heard by way of identification. So that's my position on the 2020. As far as moving forward, how would I carry myself? I would lobby for voter ID. That's what I would lobby for. I'd support it. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Harrington?
So I'll cut right to the chase. I think the answer you're looking for is, who is the president? I think President Biden is the president of the United States. He won the election. Whether or not there was some voter irregularities or some fraud, there probably was some, but I have no doubt that it was not enough to overcome the results that were in place. I have all the confidence in the world in our Secretary of State here in Maine and of our town and city clerks here in Maine that Maine's results are accurately tallied, and our elections are secure here in Maine. That said, I would like to see voter ID. I think in a time when people are questioning voter integrity, it's a very simple thing to do. Most people have an ID who vote, and for those who don't, I think the state could cover that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Williams?
I believe the election results have been valid, and I think also that Maine has a great system and has really found a way to help make voter access really easy and available. I would disagree that we need voter ID because I don't see any evidence that there was a lot of fraud related to who voted and when. I think, you have to ask yourself, if there's voter ID, does that mean people have to go to the registry in Springvale and sit and wait for 2 hours to have their picture taken? And that just puts another barrier. So how are we going to handle that? I don't think that's the biggest issue on the table. I think they're valid, and if I'm elected, I would absolutely respect the results because I agree with Mr. Harrington that we have a really solid Secretary of State's office, and also our clerks in our towns and our cities do a good job.
Thank you. Mr. McAdam?
Joe Biden's the president. I've worked as an election clerk for years now, and I don't see how anyone could fraudulently vote in the state of Maine. I can't speak for the other states in the country. First of all, you have to come in and give your name, which sometimes, like Emily might come in and it's like, oh my God, I know her, but I don't remember her name. She has to give me her name. She has to give me her address. We have to look in the book to make sure that she hasn't voted already. So it'd be very hard for somebody to fraudulently vote in the state of Maine, or at least in Sanford. So I'm okay. But as far as requiring IDs, a lot of people have come in and one of the first things they do is they whip out their wallet to show me their driver's license, which we don't require. And there are some people who can't get IDs, I guess. I don't understand that, but, I'm not in that situation. So it seems to work fine now. I don't see any reason to change it.
Thank you, Mr. McAdam. Mr. Lanigan?
I'm going to ask you to repeat the question, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Do you need the wind up too?
Well, I guess so, yeah. 'Cause
Okay,
it's very
no, I'm
confusing.
happy to do it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. What we have written here, as we all know, there was not a peaceful transition of power after the 2020 presidential election. Indeed, Maine was among other states that beefed up security around the Capitol in Augusta in the days leading up to the inauguration in 2021. If elected, you will be in office during and after the 2024 presidential election. So to us, this question therefore feels fair, relevant, and necessary. Do you believe, or rather, do you have any issues with the 2020 presidential election, whether in the way it was conducted anywhere, or the results that were ultimately certified? And how do you vow to carry yourself as a legislator during the upcoming presidential campaign, which could be pretty rough and tumble?
So first is I'm disappointed the transition of power, how that all went down. It's not how our democracy works. It's never been done that way. So from that standpoint, I'm disappointed. However, I do see the disappointment in some voters. And it's probably a silly analogy, but I bring it back to when I was a kid and my mom used to be able to write me a note saying, hey, I give my son permission to pick me up cigarettes or, whatever it might have been back in the 80s, right? Bring it down to the convenience store. And that got out of control because people filled out their own notes and figured out, hey, I can buy my own cigarettes as a youth and put my mom's name there. So they started enforcing IDs. I would be in favor of the state of Maine providing a free non-driver's license ID to anybody that needed one. I think that would be, what that would do is that would get rid of the cloud of doubt. Because on both sides, Like, however you look at it, there's doubt there. And if there's doubt and we can fix that and and bring even more integrity to it, then why wouldn't we do that? Why would we just ignore it and say, these people are crazy over here, these people are silly over here? Why wouldn't we just take the cloud of doubt out of it by providing a system that is definite? If I know Luke Lanigan at 13 Grant Street and Jack doesn't know me at the poll, I can vote. It's just like why you call up your bank, you have to give identifiers like your Social Security and other things when you are trying to access your bank account. There is ways to protect our votes, and if we can do it, then I'd be all for it.
Okay. Ms. Buck?
I think the 2020 presidential election, I thought it was scary and disrespectful. So I hope that there's other structure put in place so it's not, of course it had to be broadcast because it actually happened, but whoever's voted in as president, the governor here, all the way down to our council, to our education and school boards, I will respect whoever becomes in office because that's the way, I guess that's the way I roll. I consider myself ethical, compassionate, and fair. I'm not here for any special interest group. So again, I just think back to, I guess we're on to ID. I'm supportive of having an ID. I have to have an ID to drive a car. I have to have an ID to go to a sports event. So I just find more safety and security that people have IDs, but we got to make sure that everybody can have an ID before we go to that extreme. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mastracchio?
So there's no doubt in my mind that President Biden was elected by popular vote as well as electoral college vote. I think that as a legislator, as just an elected official, I have faith in the integrity of the system, and as an elected official, I need to make sure that everyone understands that, because I think as leaders, we cannot shed doubt on that system. It is the bedrock of our democracy. It is what it's all based on, free and fair elections that we have never, until very recently, ever had any doubt about. And I think anyone that casts doubt on that, the fact that they are free and fair and there is no fraud, so much so that every time a group tries to prove that, they cannot do that. Even former President Trump could not do that. So I'm totally saying that as a legislator, I would never cast out an election. Doesn't matter what the results are. I trust the voters, and I trust the way we conduct our elections.
To bring the question to a close, Mr. Davey?
Yeah, thanks. As far as the 2020 election, I have no issues with the results of the election. My issues are how divisive everything was during that period of time. If people have concerns with the election process, then absolutely those should be raised, and they have committees that can look into those kind of things, and I think that's how it should roll. I think we bring too much emotion into these things sometimes. So as far as how I'll carry myself during the 2024 election, I would like to do it with respect for all candidates, everybody involved, and I hope the candidates do it that way as well. I feel that even starting with campaigning and the ads being so negative, that's all you see now is don't vote for me because I'm good, vote for me because the other person's not. And I think that's a problem. And I think as far as results, or as campaigning, there's a time to advocate for yourself. There's a time to tell people what you stand for. And then there's the time for the voter to speak. And once the voters speak, you should respect that decision. That's who you're appealing to. And once the results are final, you respect it and you move on. If for some reason people want to challenge, there are those processes in place. But once you've gone through the procedures, I think you should accept it and move on.
Thank you very much. That wraps up question 7.
And here is the final question. Mr. Harrington, please tell us about a substantial issue on which you strongly disagree with your political party.
Probably LGBTQ rights is probably one of the biggest issues. Going back to when I first got involved in 2014, I was one of a few voices at that convention that voted to remove the definition of marriage from the platform. I think it's time to move on as a party. It's time to move on as a country. When the Supreme Court rules on something, it's definitely time to move on. And, you know, some factions within the party have definitely kind of held us back from moving on from that, but that is probably the biggest in terms of a platform issue that I disagree with my party on.
Thank you. Ms. Williams?
I'll be honest, I can't think of anything. I'm pretty aligned with the party, but I also am a person who really looks at issues. I'm not, anyone who knows me knows that I am not afraid of speaking up if I disagree with something. So if issues come up and I am not aligned with what the majority of the party is thinking, I definitely am confident in going my own way based on information that I absorb and consider.
Thank you. Mr. Kip McAdam, please tell us about a substantial issue on which you strongly disagree with your political party.
I really can't think of anything. I consider myself more independent. I was unenrolled for a number of years, and I wanted to vote in a primary once and registered as a Democrat. And I can't think of anything that really concerns me.
Thank you. Mr. Lanigan?
It's about our own party, right? Yes, okay. I had a whole list. I guess I gotta go back. No, I'm totally joking. Well, I guess the biggest thing right now is the fact that if you want to work with a Democrat to get something good done for the people of Maine, they don't want to do it. And the same goes on the other side. We need to break down these barriers on the aisle, and we got to be able to cross aisles so we can do what's best for our constituents. The people in Shapley, Newfield, Springvale, they care what's best for them, not what's going on with this huge political party. Soon-to-be Senator Harrington or Representative Harrington mentioned, and I agree with you, I was not impressed with the how we spoke about the LGBTQ community. I've always been very supportive of that. I'm a person that believes in our biggest American right is freedom of choice. That's what makes us Americans, is we're able to choose who we love, what we do, as long as we keep in the confines of not hurting our neighbors or not creating an unsafe position for others. So that would be it, would be that, and just being able to work across the aisle to get really good stuff done, because heck, in Maine, a lot of us think alike, and I think if we were able to break those barriers down, we could get a heck of a lot of stuff done up in Augusta for everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Bach?
I'm going to agree with Luke Lanigan on the respect of working together. It disappears that sometimes these parties are so extreme on both ends that they seem like they can't look at us, they can't say hello, to the point of agreeing on important information, which is taking care of our state and our most biggest commodity here, or most important thing is our residents and our people. And I spoke to a lot of people when I was out knocking on doors, and a lot of people are voted as, they're not on either party, they're independent, because they don't like what they see going on and they don't want to be affiliated. So, but if you asked like one question, one thing I don't agree with is legislation being passed and that it's not funded. Like, for example, we just, there was a pass with a new homestead for people 65 or over, in which their property taxes are frozen. And with that being said, that's great, and we're helping people to stay in their homes longer and support that issue of cost of living in Maine. But if we don't have the funds to pay for it and pay back our municipalities for putting that in place, I don't think that's correct. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mastracchio?
So I have a number of bills that I was able to shepherd through the legislature by working with Republicans, and actually there was one particular bill, actually were two, one that the governor actually, former Governor LePage, vetoed, and we were able to override that by working with my colleagues. But on the other, there was the tipped wage, which is actually in the news right now, because when the minimum wage bill passed referendum, it included tipped workers. And I had a number of constituents who contacted me and told me why this wasn't a good idea, and discussed it and co-sponsored a bill with Senator Roger Cates, who was a Republican. I had a lot of pushback from my party, but I knew that this was right for my constituents. They showed me why they would make more per hour, so I stood up to them. If you look and put it up there, it's one of those things where I get a big negative from the Democrats, but I did the right thing for the constituents that I served.
Thank you. Mr. Davey.
Yeah, the only thing I can really think of is probably size of government, public versus private sector. I believe that leaving things to the private sector is normally the best way to go unless the private sector is not serving that need. I do believe that there needs to be regulation to make sure that the needs of the citizens are being met, but that's probably the biggest area where I would disagree sometimes. I don't think you need to have as much bureaucracy in place, but you definitely need to have those regulations to make sure that the needs of the citizens are being met.
Thank you. Ms. Frederick.
The one issue I'd say is abortion, that I would always vote to legalize abortion. And as a clinical provider, I am certain, I'm aware of, I have been involved with circumstances where access to legal and safe abortion was indicated. And although, again, it's a personal matter, it's a complex matter, a confidential matter, but that medical procedure should be safely performed, and I would vote to maintain it in a legal state, a legal status.
Thank you very much.
There it is. We're done. This completes the legislative segment of our evening. The 2-minute, I knew I was going to, every year I almost skip over something. I think the last time I did this, it was the closing statements. My apologies. So let's back up. You're not out of the woods yet. That would be Mr. Harrington. If you could give us your 2-minute closing statement, that would be great.
Thank you again, Shawn and Tammy, for hosting this event. On November 8th, you have a choice. Maine is facing challenging times ahead. Our economy is broken. Violent crime is surging as the demonization of law enforcement continues. The only solution cannot be to throw more money at the problem. What happens when the federal money that we've been receiving over the last several years runs out? This means difficult decisions will have to be made. We must have the backs of our first responders as they have ours. My record is clear. I have the skill set to work across party lines to navigate us through these troubling times. It's been an honor to represent the people of Sanford for the last 7 years, and I would appreciate your vote November 8th.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
I think we'd all agree that global issues are affecting every aspect of our lives and creating uncertainty. When I'm out and about at events or knocking on doors in this district, I ask people what are they most concerned about. We ultimately get to some issues they identify, but I've been surprised at the first thing I hear most often is our democracy. Many express fears about the violence and hateful rhetoric that's happening in our country and the way it's become normalized. And they're angry that our politicians in Washington seem to care only about maintaining their own political power. I share those concerns. But I believe the important things that matter to us in our day-to-day lives happen at the state level. In the past few years here in Maine, and in particular the last legislative session, there have been many things that have happened to benefit the people, and many have happened on a bipartisan level. There's no shortage of challenges in our world today, but as we've faced challenges before, we've come through. And the only way to address them is for us to work together. It's not enough to identify problems. We need to understand their origin and work collaboratively to find solutions. Divisiveness will hinder progress for all of us. Through my various experiences in business, social work, nonprofit management, counseling, and community boards, I've learned that consensus and compromise happen when people are listened to and treated with respect. That's the way I would approach my role as a legislator. I'm asking for your vote so I can work with others on your behalf to ensure that we continue to move forward, giving our kids, grandkids, and future generations the same opportunities we've had.
Thank you very much. Mr. McAdam?
Like I said, in 2009, I retired, and I actually ran for, I think they called them selectmen back then. And I handily lost. I think I came in dead last. But I decided to give back to the community, so I've been on numerous boards in town, Planning Board, Charter Review Committee, Mineral Extraction, Nassau Community Center with Emily, election clerk, town meeting member, and a number of other things. I started the farmers market in Sanford. I was the manager for 10 years. I was on the board of the Maine Federation of Farmers Markets. I'm running as a Democrat, but I'm also an independent. If I'm elected, I will work collaboratively with our local elected officials in the best interests of the residents of this district, that 141. I'll strive to protect our natural resources and make sure that the governor's Maine won't wait. A 4-year plan for climate action will be followed in the legislature. We have a 20-kilowatt solar array on the barn. We also converted 2 of our diesel tractors in an RTV to biodiesel, and the shortening from the donut shack goes back into the biodiesel. So, May 5th, our granddaughter was born, Cinco de Mayo. And I'm worried about what's going to happen when she grows up. What's the climate going to be like? Is she going to have to go for shoot-of-actor drills? And is somebody going to tell her about her reproductive health, how she's going to manage that? And time's up.
Thank you, Mr. McAdam. Mr. Lanigan?
So first, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time with me and the other candidates so we can move Maine forward together, regardless of who you vote for on November 8th. I was a former city councilor and the deputy mayor of Sanford, serving at one point on all subcommittees, our planning board, budget committee, and chair of the marijuana task force, developing some of the best zoning laws in Maine. Many communities copy our program to this day. I have also served on the board of directors for our Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to take that experience up to Augusta and work and fight for the residents in my district. I am very lucky to have married up. Many in our community know Catalina, our 4 boys, and myself through many community activities, coaching, volunteering, and small businesses we have owned. I would like to think one of our biggest accomplishments entails raising our 4 boys here in the great state of Maine. Unfortunately, due to the past policies of 60-plus years with one party in control, we have been left with only one thing: high taxes, regulations, and restrictions on growth, and creating an environment for exporting our greatest asset, our youth. Our kids are moving away in groves. We need to make a decision. Do we want to be pushed out of the state that we've all built and love, or do we want to take back our representation and elect those who will do best for their constituents and not special interest? If so, I'm your guy. I ask for your support as well as from those voters who support lowering taxes, funding our nursing homes and elderly, and finally investing in our families' financial freedom from an inefficient government. We need to bring back the voice of the parents to our schools and stop catering to the whims of school unions, while leaving our kids with inadequate services and policies that continually hamper their success in public schools. We need to get back to the basics and teaching life, not ideals. I want to thank everyone for your consideration to be allowed to represent you and your families. I promise to commit myself to making your lives free to make the choices best for you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lanigan. Ms. Buck?
I'd like to thank everyone that organized and took the time to make Candidates Night successful, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share my viewpoints. Again, I'm running because I care and I'm concerned about our community and our state. Maine's economy and the protection of our natural and human resources. Looking around Sanford every month, another business has closed its door, another family has moved, and someone becomes homeless because of the high cost to live here in Maine. Priorities need to start at the state level. Maine's tax structure needs to be totally revamped, starting at the state level to reduce the tax burdens of property owners and business owners. The homestead exemption, as I mentioned earlier, does not begin to reduce the cost of home ownership. Our education and training requires state ownership to attract higher paying jobs with competitive benefits. The crisis of opioids is now a constant and cannot be put aside. Too many have died. And resources for economic development needs to be a top priority. It's simple: no business, no workers, no states. I've been consistent to seek your vote to be elected, and I want to work for our community, not just fill a political seat. I am a full-time worker. My diverse work experience include human resources, employment services, community development, and I held several jobs with nonprofits and municipal governments, and I served on the Sanford Housing Authority and Great Bay Services Board. My family and myself have been raised and educated here in Maine, along with my husband of 35 years, and now I'm assisting in taking care of my vibrant father. So I promise to work and protect the rights of all residents, and I want to represent my community of Sanford, Springvale, and our state as a whole. So please vote on November 8th. Your vote really counts.
Thank you, Ms. Buck. Ms. Mastracchio.
It has been an honor to represent Sanford over the years, and I have always tried to do so in a manner that would reflect well on all of you and make you proud to know I was standing up for Sanford. Over more than 30 years of public service, one principle has guided me: make life better for the people I serve. That is what I believe government can and should do. Good schools that provide many options for our students, a job that pays a living wage, safe, affordable housing, quality childcare, and access to all of our health care needs. These are crucial elements for a quality of life we all deserve. I pledge to work collaboratively with local municipal and school officials, as well as legislative colleagues, and I will be an effective advocate for legislation that improves everyday life in our community. I have always kept the city's best interests front and center. I do not pretend to have all the answers, but I've learned that much can be accomplished with hard work and compromise. It's truly been a privilege to serve the citizens of Sanford, and I thank you for placing your trust in me over these many years. I respectfully ask for your vote November 8th so that I can continue to work on your behalf. And I have one more thing to ask of you. It might be the most important thing I say tonight. Please vote. Encourage everyone you know to vote. Vote in person or absentee, it doesn't matter. If you are not registered to vote, then please register. You can even register at the polls on Election Day with proof of residency. We make it easy to vote in Maine. Our democracy depends on the participation of its citizens and faith in the integrity of the voting process. Our elections are safe and secure, and I trust the results no matter what they are.
Thank you very much. Mr. Davey.
Thanks. I want to thank the moderators for their thoughtful questions, the timekeeper, all the candidates who participated tonight, members of public who showed up in person, as well as everyone watching. I'm running for office to be part of a creative problem solving for my community. Maine has incredibly diverse communities that make up the collective of the whole state, and policies have to make sense and celebrate those differences. What makes sense for some communities like Kennebunk, Port, or Cape Elizabeth doesn't always make sense for communities like Sanford. I want to advocate for the population in my district. I want to make a difference and show people that you can work together to get things done, that it's a good thing to have different opinions, and that we can respectfully disagree and still find solutions that will work for Mainers. I want to make sure that Maine continues to fund education properly and that we look to serve all children in every community. I also want to make sure we continue to improve healthcare in Maine, make sure that people have proper access to providers and specialists, and that it's affordable. As your representative in Augusta, I'll bring family values and work hard to make sure legislation is helping Maine families in their communities. It's easy for us to sit up here and talk about what we want to do, but what's going to make a good representative, in my opinion, is how hard they work during their term. If elected, I'll work hard to represent everyone in District 143, regardless of political affiliation. I'll work with representatives from all parties to find creative solutions to the issues we face today and keep Maine as an affordable place to live as possible. I hope I can earn your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davey. Ms. Fredericks?
We need improvement. Having relationships and speaking with the people of Sanford has allowed me to validate that there's disappointment out there. The sentiment is we can do better and we deserve better. And we need a fresh voice to say enough is enough, and that's me. Costs are soaring. The Department of Education has lost the vote of confidence from parents. Untreated mental illness is what robs the individual of his or her potential, while it destroys the family, the communities, and oftentimes results in substance abuse and crime. Just take a look at Center Park. The healthcare system needs to improve access and add providers, and it can do that by cutting documentation requirements. The need to simplify and speed up, not get buried by bureaucracy. I believe the old adage, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Let's spend more effort thinking, offering solutions on how we can transition people off of government relief programs and retool them for a lifetime. As a nurse practitioner, I've been trained to listen, assess, and not judge. I can critically think, suggest options, I teach, I evaluate. If elected, I would use my knowledge, skills, and abilities in the best interest of Sanford citizens. See, I have skin in the game, 3 generations here. Things move at a snail's pace in the government. We need to shrink, simplify, and move, move, move. I have the energy, the will, and the intellect to listen, glean out what's important, and problem solve. Anyone can see Sanford has an abundance of potential. Discussions with differing opinions is a gift that allows us to reset and learn. It's time we think outside of the box for solutions. When you go to the high school on November 8th to vote, please, please, please vote Fredericks for state representative. Let's save our state, because I'm all in.
That brings us to a close, correct? All right. Thank you very much, all of you, for appearing here tonight.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Shawn.
very much.
And Tammy.
It takes a lot to throw yourselves out there and to get involved, and we're grateful. And yes, that concludes this segment. Next up, School Committee, 10-minute break. There's pizza in that blue
Take that home later. Close. Mischio. Yeah, Mischio. Say it. You slur all the consonants together. You can just say Tom. It's okay. Tom works. Yeah. But you can just say Tom if you want. That's okay. I don't mind. All right, all right.
Okay. Yes.
Just keep it simple over here. Was willing before, now it's.
Nice and straightforward. That's the way to do it. That's all right.
I'm ready. Okay, welcome back. I believe I'm on, yeah. Yes, I am. My microphone has been adjusted, so to anybody living at home, if watching from home, if I sounded like the teachers in the Charlie Brown cartoon, I apologize, and so hopefully you can hear me better now. This is the school committee segment of our evening, and we have with us 3 candidates seeking 2 positions, 3-year terms. And from left to right, or our left to right, we have Thomas Mischio, we have Melissa Simpson, and Kelly Termath. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Just a few ground rules and just some formatting. We're going to start with 1-minute introductions that each of you will be able to address listeners in the audience and at home. When we get to the Q&A, you'll have 90 seconds to respond, 1.5 minutes. Emily here has some signs to let you know along the way when your time's up is approaching. Then after the questions this evening, there are 7. After the questions this evening, you'll get a 2-minute closing remark. That'll be your elevator pitch to voters. Let's see, if your microphones are different than ours, so if you have any questions, just let me know. But there's a button. Do you see the button? Just press that when you're ready to speak, and that will allow you to be heard. Okay, if anybody who might have turned on their phones or turned up their phones during the break, if you could turn them down again, so that we don't have any ringtones or dings during the next half hour, or however long this takes. Okay, so without one moment more, let's go to those introductions. Mr. Mischio, please start us off.
Thank you, Shawn. So, good evening, everyone. Thanks for everyone for putting this on, Maura for organizing it, and everyone for watching here in person and online. Some of you may recognize me. I was on the school committee 4 years ago, for about 4 years. It was a great time. I really think we did a lot of work. I learned a lot during that time. And then I took a break for about 4 years, and now I'm back again seeking another seat. Some of you also may know me as Coach Tom. I've been involved in coaching my kids' sports for a number of years in Sanford, basketball, soccer mainly, a little baseball in there. And so I've volunteered a bunch in the community. I think being on the school committee is a great opportunity to give back to the community, to shape the education for our children, and as well as the community in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Simpson?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Simpson. For anyone who doesn't know me, I just figured I would open and kind of introduce myself and tell you who I am and where I'm from. I moved here to Southern Maine from Presque Isle, and I've been living here for most of my adult life. I met my husband now of 13 years, and we decided to raise our family here in Sanford. Once my children reached school age, I immediately wanted to be involved. I joined the PTA at Carl J. Lamb, and of course, with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, I can't say that I was much help. So I got involved the best way I knew how. I actually wrote my very first grant proposal for the playground there. We didn't get the grant, but it was an opportunity for me to learn more about our school system. Since my kids were transferred to MCS, both of my children were there. I joined the PTA. I became the vice president of the PTA. I served as president for 2021 and 22. I'm dedicated in my involvement with the community and our school, and I look forward to and nervous for these questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Termath?
Good evening. My name is Kelly Termath. I am a 1997 graduate of Sanford High School. I was born and raised right here in this community where my husband and I both raise our 3 wonderful boys. We have an 8th grader and a 5th grader right now at Sanford Middle School, and we have our littlest is now a kindergartner at Margaret Chase Smith. I coached soccer for my older son for 3 years. For 7 years, I was a special education tech for the Sanford School Department. I have been working in public service for the better part of my life. I was also a volunteer of my husband's military unit's family readiness group, and I hope to continue to serve the public and our community if I'm elected as a member of the Sanford School Committee.
Excellent. Thank you very much for those introductions.
And here we go with the questions. And the first one goes to Ms. Simpson. First, everybody gets it, but you get it first. What limits, if any, do you personally feel should be placed on which books are allowed in our school libraries?
So I think that this is a very controversial topic, of course, but it really depends on, I think some of it has to do with age appropriate and what school you're speaking of. I think it's very important that we are not rushing our children into things where they're not, mentally prepared or ready for. Middle-aged students especially, I feel that we push them into almost adultism too soon. So I don't know of any, I don't have any, I don't follow the book thing that's been going on very closely. It would be something that I'd have to do a little more research on if it was brought to me as a committee member. I certainly would do my research, get my facts straight, and provide a solution from there.
Thank you. Mr. Math?
I totally agree with Ms. Simpson. It all depends on the age of the student. I believe that some books should not be allowed in elementary school, but I would also be looking into the situation if I was on the committee, into it more as to what books are being offered for the kids to read in each grade level.
Mr. Michio?
Just feel like I'm going to say what they said. I think it's really important that the books be age appropriate. That being said, if a parent finds a book or their child brings home a book that parent feels is inappropriate, an open dialogue about why it's inappropriate is really important. They need to be able to address it not only with the teacher who gave their student the book, or the librarian where the book is available, but also bring it here to the school committee so we can have that conversation. We as a school committee need to act in the best interest of all the students in Sanford, and making that analysis on a case-by-case basis with something like that is really important, because we don't just represent a portion of the student population, but all of them in what is in their best interests. So having that open dialogue is really important with the community.
Thank you.
Okay. Question number 2. Ms. Termath, you're going to start us off with this one. Is there any topic currently being taught in Sanford schools that you feel should not be taught? And please explain your answer.
I feel this is a loaded question, but there are lots of topics that are being taught in our schools. I feel kind of impartial to this because I have asked my children what are being taught in their classrooms. I don't really know what's being taught in the classroom because we don't get a curriculum sent home. So until I know further what's actually being taught in the classroom, this is where I'm kind of at an impasse with this question.
Thank you. Mr. Michio?
So I don't know if I would call it a loaded question, but you're asking what classes are taught that shouldn't necessarily be taught. And it's not necessarily the title of the class that gives you that indication. It's what is actually the subject matter in the class. So if you're talking about like a health education class and sexual education, that sort of thing, it's how it's taught in the class, what is age appropriate for the students, and dissecting the subject matter, not necessarily the class title. So if you've got a health class, it should cover sex ed, but it should cover sex ed in an age-appropriate forum in the high school or in the middle school, wherever they're doing it. So without looking specifically at the class and the curriculum for the class, I can't really answer that question. Again, that open dialogue from a parent about what they feel is inappropriate is the really important part. Being able to come to the school committee or a teacher or a principal and expressing their concerns, and then it being addressed is what's important.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Simpson?
Can you repeat the question really quick?
Sure. Is there any topic, subject matter, currently being taught in Sanford schools that you feel should not be taught? Please explain your answer.
So there are some subjects that I am a little sensitive to. I did mention I'm from Presque Isle, so I feel like we're a little behind the times on some things. And I do think that the resolution to some of this issue or some of these parents' concerns is, for one, the sex education class would be to actually have signed permission slip for your child to attend that. Another thing that I want to mention on that is I actually would love to be on the curriculum committee that we have and our school committee, simply because it would give me some more perspective. I don't think I have enough knowledge of the breakdown of the curriculum. I did find it. There is access to it online, so if any parent really wants to do their digging, they certainly can. But again, I think some of the things that may be in question of age appropriateness maybe has a parent sign off or an alternate location for children to go if a parent does not agree with a potential curriculum question.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Let's turn this one around a little bit. Mr. Michio, is there any topic that Sanford Schools is not currently teaching students that you feel ought to be taught? And please explain your answer.
Well, it's not a topic that's not being taught. It's a topic that I think should be emphasized more, and that's civic education and history. I think particularly given the current climate in our nation and in Maine, that students learning about their civic obligations, the history of our state as well as our nation, and really appreciating that should be emphasized more. Emphasizing the fact that, how the process works, what the different levels of government are, how the town's governance works, how the state governance works, that it's a federal system and not necessarily specifically a direct democracy. All of those things I think we're losing somewhere in the educational process in terms of a person's actual understanding of that. Understanding our nation's history and how our government is put together is an important part of being an active member of society and really appreciating the freedoms we have and the voting that we do. And I think those topics need to be emphasized more, particularly at the high school level where students are a little more aware of the real world outside of high school.
Thank you. Ms. Simpson.
So I don't have full awareness of everything that we do teach or offer at our school system. I know that our administration does an amazing job trying to keep everybody, up to date with what's going on. I know that I would love to see more, actual natural life lessons, budgeting, things like that. I know that we do offer like a bridge program that gets kids into the next phase or next level, and they've been working a lot on that recently as well. So I'd say that I don't know of a specific thing that I think that our school system should bring in simply because I haven't had enough involvement in all ages of our school at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Math?
So from when I was attending school here, when I was in the junior high, which is now middle school now, we were offered woodworking, home economics, all those kinds of classes. I would like to see those come back at a junior high level for 7th and 8th graders so that they can get a taste of what they could possibly do and potentially do when they get to high school for, say, VOTEC education.
Thank you.
Okay. Question number 4, and this is a question that voters will be weighing in on as well, in part with one of their ballot questions. Do you favor eliminating the Budget Committee? And please, either way, explain your answer. Yes, I apologize. Ms. Simpson, you get the first answer.
So I don't favor necessarily getting rid of the Budget Committee. I think that the analyzation of the budget is extremely important. It's one of the things that I would look forward to while serving on the committee, simply because, well, I like numbers, and it really just shows, to be able to explain where all that, all the money is, where the money does go, and to just be able to validate that, as well as if there is it seems to be an increase, or, it would be nice if there would be a decrease, but if there was an increase, you could really dive into explaining where that comes from, and I think the committee does a great job of doing that. Of course, I do hear there's some hours involved in that, but, I think rightfully so.
Thank you. Ms. Tremath?
I am not in favor of getting rid of the Budget Committee. I think, as we've all said, full transparency should be out there for every citizen in the city to understand more about the budget. I haven't looked at a budget or seen a budget for the school department, or the city in general, but I feel if I get on the committee, doing numbers, looking at where we could cut, where we could put more use, is good to do, and having other input from citizens around the city is also a great idea.
Thank you very much. Mr. Michio?
So I guess we're all in agreement. No one wants to get rid of the Budget Committee, and I think that's a good thing. During the time that I served on the school committee prior, there was tension between the town and the city and the school committee about that process, about the school committee coming before the Budget Committee, explaining how the money's being spent, and then answering questions about that. The part of it that is a good process is, where's the money going? It's great to have the sunshine on everybody's budget so you can see where the money's being spent, because it's an expensive budget. That being said, at a certain point, the school committee and the school department gets to decide how the money is spent. So having the transparency there for everyone to see where it's going is great, but it doesn't necessarily need to be as contentious between the city and the school committee, because it's all of our taxpayer money, and it's an informational process about how the money is being spent, whether the city's spending it or the school committee's spending it.
Ms. Tremath, I think you're up next. If you were elected, I think you would, if I recall correctly, you'd take office in January. So if the need for a budget cut, school budget cut would come this winter, what would you cut and why? You might be tempted to say you don't know and you'd need to assess the situation as it arises. We'd like you all instead to use this question as an opportunity to show us what your priorities would be if faced with challenging times.
So, like you said, yes, I would have to see the budget to actually see where things could be cut from. At this point, I don't see me cutting anything at this point, because I haven't seen the budget. But if hard times did come down, I think that we could start cutting somewhere, I don't feel that we need to have as many counselors as we do for, say, substance abuse counseling. I think that could be handled better with just the counselors that we have at the school level. That would be one thing that I would ask to kind of cut back on. Other than that, I would really, really have to dive into the budget and look to see where else things could be cut.
Thank you. Mr. Michio.
Sure. So the majority of the Sanford School Committee budget is people. It's teachers, it's ed techs, it's counselors, it's administration. It's the people that make up the majority of the budget, and that's not only for salary reasons, but for healthcare reasons. Healthcare costs are something that very few people here in Sanford have very direct control over. They rise every year, and so we're obligated to provide that to our staff and to our faculty. And so when you talk about cutting, what you're really talking about is cutting people. The facilities are what they are. You've got to maintain the facilities to keep the value in the community, to maintain them so they're good facilities for the students. And so then it becomes a really hard question about which ed techs, not which ones, how many you need, how many teachers you need. Can you make class sizes bigger by eliminating a math teacher or a person like that? And those are very hard personnel decisions that need to be made by the school committee and the superintendent's office. I can't say I would be in favor of firing anybody because it's a resource for the town that draws people to the town to help us grow as a school, grow as an economy, grow as a town. So if we were going to take cuts, it would be talking about people, and it would be, my decision would be based on the recommendations I received from the superintendent, as well as the administration about where we could trim people.
Thank you. Ms. Simpson?
I would obviously have to agree with that. Our student ratio is to teachers 13 to 1. So I guess that is the question. What ed techs or what classrooms may not need the extra support. It's definitely not something that I'm knowledgeable enough into to really get into. I know you'd asked that we give a solid answer for this, but I will always base my decisions on facts, and without actually doing the research and gaining the facts, it would be hard for me to say where I would do a budget cut. Again, the budget is something that I was very intrigued with when we voted it through recently. I did some this past year. I did a little research. I actually cannot comprehend or understand fully, without diving into it, how we get our number versus other towns and communities, because that's kind of what I was looking at, like where are we at versus Scarborough, Saco, whatever. And it also has to do with obviously our subsidy rates and things like that. So it'd really be it'd be hard pressed for me to tell you something without getting my facts straight first.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Michio, you're going to kick off question number 6 for us tonight. What in the Sanford school system do you feel needs to change? And if elected, how will you work to bring about that change?
Well, that's something that I talked about a few minutes ago. It's the emphasis on the history and civic education for our students. So again, particularly at the high school level, where the real life is much more in their foreminds right after graduation. So focusing on history and civic education, making that more of an emphasis prior to graduation, building that into our graduation requirements a little heavier is something that I would want to change in developing that curriculum in that area. And also, I agree with Melissa that the real life skills, financial literacy, balancing your checkbook. There is a component of our curriculum that is directed at that. I believe it's a graduation requirement at this time, but expanding on that as well is something that I think we could push in this session and make a better part of our curriculum.
Thank you very much. Ms. Simpson.
So, of course, the life skills, which I had mentioned, but something else that comes to mind is after-school activities. I think that Sanford is actually lacking a place for some of our children to go, or things for them to do after school hours. So that's something that I would, like to see more involvement in, and I just think that it's important. I know that we do have several youth in this community that would appreciate, they may not be in sports, but they would appreciate some more STEM and after-school programs.
Thank you very much, Ms. Simpson. Ms. Termath?
Like I said before, taking it down to the junior high level, the 7th and 8th graders, getting them more involved with like a home economics, a life lesson class, or woodworking, or just anything that they could do, even shadowing at VOTEC in 8th grade, going over and seeing what is offered. I'm not sure if that's offered now, but going over and seeing what could be offered to them as they get into high school. And I do agree with Tom. Civics is a nice big thing that should be taught as well. And the economic part of it, learning how to balancing a checkbook is another thing.
Thank you very much.
This goes a lot faster when there's 3 candidates, not 8.
It does.
This is a final question, and I can't remember who gets that first.
Let's see. Final question goes to Ms. Simpson.
Ms. Simpson. Ms. Simpson. What is your assessment on the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on local education? What, if any, are some things you still feel need to be done to get our students' education fully back on track?
Can you repeat that real quick? Sorry.
Sure. I think I can. What is your assessment on the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on local education? What, if any, are some things you feel still need to be done to get our students' education back on track fully?
So of course, mental health is a huge, was probably the biggest factor in the impact on what COVID-19 had on our school system and our children. I think that we've implemented several things to help alleviate some of that pain, but I do also believe that a larger outreach program or just putting more time and effort into that. I think that some of the children that derailed are still derailed, especially at the older middle school and high school levels, and just letting them know that there's alternative education like the adult ed program. I'd like to see more enrollment in that if that's the choice that these children that have stepped away from the public school department, if that's the choice that makes more sense for them, I'd like to see that increase.
Thank you. Mr. Math?
So coming from a parent with a kid with a disability, I feel that COVID had a real big impact on him. Learning from home via the computer for, the learning disability that he has was not conducive for him. I feel that teachers that are working with him now and other teachers in the community, in the school community, could be helping these children get back up to speed. It's something that, really hits me hard because he had such a struggle. I mean, with the mask, not being able to see his teacher's face, that really hit a lot of kids hard. And I think that we need more one-on-one with a teacher and a student than putting them on a computer for most of the day too, as well. I think we need to get back to here I am, I'm here for you, here I am to teach you, and not push them off to the side and say, here, this is our lesson for the day, get on your computer and do it.
Thank you. Mr. Michio.
Thank you. So, firstly, the school committee and the school department, the faculty, the staff that actually went through that pandemic in terms of being on the front lines, dealing with all the issues that arose, the different policies need to be in place, did a great job. It was a difficult time, and everyone involved did a great job pushing through that. I think the educational part of it, what we need to focus on is what's, if I remember correctly, is intervention programs. So an intervention program is when the teacher can identify an area where, Nick doesn't know how to do Algebra 1. There's a topic in Algebra 1, he doesn't know how to do it very well. Teacher can send him to an intervention program during Spartan time and beef up his knowledge of that area. And that's what we need to focus on, is providing more of those interventions, because it's not, you don't know the entire class, it's you're missing this piece. And so if we can teach you this piece in an intervention and help those students recover those skills that they lost during the pandemic, that's important. The other part of it that I'm not sure how to recover from is just the social impact that the pandemic imposed on all of us, kids in particular, where they were home all the time and didn't see their friends and interact socially. And developing those social skills by being back in the classroom is important as well.
Thank you.
Okay, not going to forget this time. The elevator pitch. The last segment, or the last part of this segment, is an opportunity for you to take 2 minutes and make closing statements to the voters, to everybody watching and listening. And Ms. Termath, you get to go first. You're up.
Thanks once again, Shawn and Tammy, for, being the proctors for this evening. It's been great. Thank everyone again for this opportunity. If I'm elected to serve this community, I plan to be the voice of the parents in our community who feel like they do not have one. I will make sure that every parent knows what is being taught in our classrooms. If they don't know where to find it, I will certainly go and hunt it down for them. I feel that we need to have full transparency when it comes to what is being taught in our schools. Communication is key with every aspect of our lives. I will also work on making the classroom at an elementary level more engaging. I would like to see teachers to be more down to a kid's level in the classroom. When it comes to the budget, like I said, I've never seen the budget, but I will look at ways to help make it more economical for the taxpayers in our community. As we know, inflation has caused a lot of pain and struggle for a lot of people here in town. So I'm asking for your vote on November 8th. You can come out and vote early right here in City Hall or down at your local polling stations. But either way, please vote for Kelly Tarmath. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Michio?
Thank you. So, thank you everyone for putting this on tonight. We really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity for us to be here and tell you what we think about the Sanford School Committee and the Sanford community in general. I think one of the things that's important for being a school committee member is having a good base of knowledge about how things work in that area, whether it be the budget process, how Sanford schools are funded locally as well as from the state, understanding the special ed department, understanding how the curriculum is developed. All of those things, there's a steep learning curve when you're first on a school committee, just in terms of how it works, not necessarily whether you're deciding what the curriculum should be or whether you're making the right decision about a particular topic, but just how you got there. And what the process is and the volume of information you need to be able to digest early on in being a school committee member is something that I've already gone through once, having been on a school committee previous to this. So if I'm elected come November, starting in January, then I won't have such a steep learning curve getting on the school committee. It'll be more of an opportunity for me to hit the ground running and address issues for the substance of them and not being so worried about or concerned or not having knowledge of how we got there process-wise, whether it's a budget issue in terms of making cuts or presenting to the budget committee or addressing a curriculum issue that comes before us as a school committee or even a disciplinary issue that comes before us as a school committee. So I would appreciate your vote on November 8th for school committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to bring the segment to a close, Ms. Simpson.
So first, I want to thank everybody here that's put all their effort and time into this evening. It really shows your investment in our community. Not being a lifelong Sanford resident, I have seen firsthand the heart of this community over the past several years. So many people have come together for our children to give so much of their time and energy to make each year better than the last. I've always wanted to do as much as I can to be a positive energy and make a difference for our kiddos while continuing to support our teachers and staff. My passion for our youth and my understanding that they are our future is the biggest driving factor for me to join our school committee. Knowing and understanding many of our parents, our teachers, our administrators, and our children is why I feel that I'm perfectly suited for this job. I fully recognize the great amount of work that it takes to be a part of the school department leadership team and will be honored to be a helpful part of their work in the next few years. I've seen firsthand the amount of passion our teachers have here, from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, and have been a part of honoring many of our most impactful teachers in my journey of getting to know Sanford and the people within it. I hope to be a positive influence in the collaboration between our community, the parents, students, and teachers, and look forward to watching and continuing the growth. I'm confident in my ability to remain open-minded, listen to others' perspectives, provide feedback, ask questions, and remain knowledge-based. I am ready to commit the time necessary it takes to learn, appreciate, understand, and make a difference in our educational process here in Sanford. My only hope will be that this committee will do our best to appropriately support our community, our teachers, our leaders, and most importantly, what we will do to support our youth. I ask for your vote in November with confidence that I will do my best to make a difference and that I will truly be invested in doing what is right.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We thank you for coming out here this evening and taking part. And as well, we thank you for stepping forward and running. I think we've all seen news stories. They're all across the nation. It's quite a job you're seeking, quite a post you're seeking. It has its share of challenges and requires certain courage and conviction and what have you. So thank you very much for stepping forward to serve in your quest to serve on our Sanford School Committee. And that brings the segment to a close. Yes. So we'll take another short break, and then last up is the City Council candidates. Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
How you doing? All right, all right. Think this is me? Go right here.
I assume that is correct.
You need to be here first, so the rest of us know where. Gotcha. Got the way. Good luck.
Do what? What do you think? She's in a position to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good at improvising. Okay,
Okay,
so,
we're all seated. Oh,
The wrong one.
okay,
ultramat.
we shall begin. There's
Yep, there are.
Okay, welcome back. The final segment of the evening, the city council race, in which we have 4 candidates from our left. We have Oliver Jones III, welcome. Robert Stackpole, the incumbent candidate. Michael Termath, incumbent candidate. And Peter Tranchmontang. Thank you very much for being here this evening. I want to thank everybody for their patience. We know that it's running a little longer than we had scheduled for this evening. But there were a lot of questions that we thought were important to ask, and we're glad we did, so we're grateful for your patience. Just a couple of rules and guidelines. We're going to start with 1-minute introductions, each of you. And after that, we will, sure enough, delve into the Q&A, at which point each of you will get 90 seconds to answer the questions. And Emily here has all these signs to let you know at certain markers along the way as your countdown progresses and your time up approaches. And then after all that is done, we have about 7 questions for you this evening. Once that is done, we'll have 2-minute closing remarks, your elevator pitch to voters. Let's see, if any of you have any questions about the microphones, yours is different than ours, but you have a button right there. And that's how you're able to speak and have us all hear you. And just as I did with the other segments at the start of them, if anybody has their cell phones, if you could turn them down or perhaps even turn them off so that we're not interrupted with any phone calls or any beeps or any many noises that cell phones make, that would be good. And then quickly, before we begin, I do want to say thank you so that when this is truly finished, we're all able to call it a night. My name is Shawn Sullivan. I'm one of the moderators this evening. This is
I'm Tammy Wells, I'm the other one.
And Tammy, thank you so much for joining me.
We've done
evening.
this
I
how many
appreciate it.
times?
I think this is like the 9th year. I wasn't here last year. There was a virus going around that I might have caught. But
Yeah, yeah.
also want to thank Zendelle Bouchard of the Sanford Springvale News. She does a wonderful job with the local news in her pamphlet and in her online service, and she helped us. She met with us and helped devise the questions this time around.
And the 3 of us are the only ones that know what the questions are.
Exactly, just the 3 of us. Emily Sheffield is the one who's helping us stay on time. Ben Gore is our tech guru back there, making it possible for this to be viewed not just now, but later as well. Sarah Schnell is to thank. We also want to thank Maura, who worked very hard to organize this, and Larissa Crockett from the city manager's office, who helped as well. There we go. I hope I did not miss anybody. If I did, I apologize. But let's get going. With the introductions, we're going to start with Mr. Jones first, please.
My name is Oliver Jones. Thank you all for being here and having me here for this debate. I'm a 23-year Navy veteran, just recently retired back in March, and moved to Sanford because I just love it. I moved to New England about 8 years ago, and Sanford just caught my eye. And with the potential you guys have here, I want to make a difference here. So I'm here to lend my experience from living around the world and moving around the world and living around the country and stuff like that to help Sanford grow to where I know it can be. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Stackpole?
Good evening. My name is Bob Stackpole, and I'm running for re-election to my 3rd term as your city council member. First, let me thank everyone involved in putting on this extremely important event for our community. My history of community service in Sanford and Springvale is long and varied. I served for 15 years on the Sanford School Committee, with 13 of those years as chair. I served as a chair of the Charter Commission in 2010 and as a member of the recent Charter Review Committee. I served numerous times on the Budget Committee as chair and member and have been your City Council representative for the past 6 years. I hold a Bachelor of Science degree in Education and a Master of Science degree in Educational Administration. Now retired, I worked for 32 years in education as a teacher and technology director. I'm running for re-election because I believe Sanford and Springvale are at the pinnacle of great things, and I want to continue this exciting work for our community.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tremath?
Good evening. Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Tammy. Good evening to the residents of Sanford Springvale. My name is Michael Termath. I'm your current city councilor. I was elected in June of this year. It's an honor and a privilege to continue the work right now. I'm currently serving on the Solid Waste Committee. I'm also a military veteran, a 25-year combat veteran of the United States Army of the Iraq campaign. And I'm a husband, a father to 3 wonderful boys, Nolan, Tyler, and Callan. Sanford's a wonderful place to raise a family, but like many other places, we do have our fair share of challenges, and tonight I hope to shed some light on those challenges that we face. I want the voters to know that I have a bold vision and that I'm a hard worker, and I've been the voice of the taxpayer, and I'm going to continue to listen to them and to do the bidding of our constituents here locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tranchmontang?
Good evening, Sanford Springville voters. Shawn, Tammy, and Emily, thank you for doing this. Thank you for your time. My name is Peter Tranchmontang. I'm running for one of the 2 seats available for the City Council this November's election. I'm a lifelong resident of Sanford. I'm 56 years old. I'm a proud graduate of Sanford High School, class of 1985. I was raised by a single mother and my 2 older sisters right here. I've been married for 33 years to my beautiful wife, Tina, and I'd like to thank her for always supporting me. We have 1 amazing child, our son, Stefan. We're very proud of him. We have a beautiful daughter-in-law, Nicole, and we are so grateful for our 2 grandchildren, Jackson Peter and Olivia Rose. These are our G kids, our pride and joy. I'm a small business owner since 2011. I've had great success at our state capitol in Augusta, working with legislation. Okay. That's okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Before I ask the first question, which will go to Mr. Stackpole, we're going to take turns rotating the questions. Who gets to answer them first? I want to say that there are 2 seats on the council, 2 3-year seats that are on the ballot next month. And we, as you can see, have 4 candidates hoping to win those seats. Question number 1 for Mr. Stackpole. Please give us your detailed vision of what you would like our hometown, downtown Sanford, to look like in 10 years. Tell us what must be done to realize this vision.
The first thing that needs to be done is we need to fix the mill yard, because we can't really do much else with the downtown area successfully without successfully dealing with the mill yard and its hindrance on the community. The Goodall Mills, whatever it was, I think it was almost as long as I've been alive, abandoned those mills on the city of Sanford, which never should have been allowed, and they've been a blight on the community pretty much ever since. So we have to fix the mill yard. As everyone has probably read, we have the RAISE grant that is going to provide us $25 million to revitalize our downtown area, and that's going to be important. We need to, first of all, that's a wonderful, fantastic opportunity for the citizens of Sanford. I think the issue with the revitalization is we need to bring more businesses back into the downtown area, more restaurants, more places for people to shop. It needs to be pedestrian friendly, therefore. I also think it should be a connecting point for all the trails that are in the vicinity. It should be a place where somebody can maybe get on their bike in Kennebunk and ride over to Sanford and have lunch and turn around, or an ice cream cone and turn around and go back and do a little shopping. So pedestrian-friendly, revitalized, and we do need to deal with the mill yard.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tremath?
Thank you, Shawn. So it's simple. It starts off with having jobs, right? Bringing jobs back in our community. So right now, we're a little upside down when it comes to that topic. You know, right now, we're about 90% residential, about 10% business. So, as a matter of fact, it's one of those topics where, in order to bring people back into the community, we need to have good quality jobs. Now we have jobs, but we need to diversify a little bit more, right? So that's what I'm focusing on, and that's what my platform I'm going to start with. Thank you.
Mr. Tranchmontang?
Thank you. I believe one way is very important is to make Sanford Springvale small business friendly, which it currently is not. I believe that we can bring in more jobs, more revenue. If you look at Wells and their tax revenue for residential, it's a vast difference than Sanford because of all the companies they have there and all the jobs. It's a huge difference. I believe that we need to open up Sanford Springvale roads for more commerce, like double lanes down 109 from the highway to at least the airport. This would give us a chance to be involved. We've been compared to Dover and Portsmouth for cities, and we don't have highway access. I believe that's a huge thing we have to look at into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones?
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Absolutely. Let's see. Please give us your detailed vision of what you would like downtown Sanford to look like in 10 years, and please tell us what must be done to realize that vision.
I'd like to see more businesses open, of course, like everybody else. I mean, we need stuff here in Sanford. Clothing, entertainment, stuff like that. I also want to get family-friendly events here. Like this past weekend, I tried to coordinate a family-friendly event with Pokemon Go. My daughter loves that game, so I tried to, encourage her to give me ideas for Sanford and stuff like that, get the youth involved. Another thing is getting the high school involved. We have the tech school there. There are plenty of things they can do to help modernize the city and revitalize it too. So just getting the community involved will bring businesses, money, people, everything here to Sanford.
Thank you very much.
I think Mr. Tremath gets the next question first. As I understand it, a consensus among subcommittee counselors is needed to move an item to the full council. This means a single counselor can prevent an item from moving forward. Do you agree with this policy or not? Please explain your answer.
I do. All right. Let me start off by saying that, it's coming on to the council and learning this role, from June. All right. Every counselor is assigned to a committee, subcommittee. And of course, when you're expected to vote, at the council, when we're up here together as a team, if not every counselor is a part of that process, then, how are people expected to know how they're going to vote or, get the information and knowledge with that regard. So if one person, can hold up that business, to me, it's fine because, everybody needs to be in the loop. All 7 of us need to be on the same page. We might not always agree, but when we disagree, we can do it with civility and respect.
Thank you. Mr. Tranchmontang?
Would you repeat the question?
Sure, I'll try.
Thank you.
As I understand it, currently, a consensus among subcommittee counselors is needed to move an item to the full council for consideration. This means a single counselor can prevent an item from moving forward to the full board. Do you agree with this policy or not? Please explain your answer.
Yes, I do. You need to be fully educated on what you're voting on. If one of our counselors doesn't understand what's going on, this would be a problem. You have to be involved. You have to be fully educated on everything that they're coming to you. I would ask for a recess and see if we could discuss or table for the next Tuesday that we have an opening. That way it would be fully, no misunderstandings.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
I don't think that one person should be holding the whole process up. Now, when we come to meetings and stuff like that, we ask questions. We read up on everything, get knowledge on stuff like that, to be knowledgeable what you are voting on. So to have one person hold it up, where they can just ask questions and then become more knowledgeable of what they're trying to vote on, in order to make the conscious decision of what they want to vote on. So that's my stance on that.
Thank you. Mr. Stackpole?
So just to be clear, we're talking about subcommittee work, not full council work. So let's think about the word consensus, because that's the key word here. Consensus means everybody has to agree. The real issue is, how do you come to consensus? Okay, in the 6 years I've been on the council, we've never had an issue where one person has stopped something from moving forward and on to the full city council. Remember, we're just coming to consensus to move it forward to the council. The council still has the final decision. So the issue is coming to consensus, and that's really the role of the chair or the leader of the subcommittee, to bring the other two counselors in on consensus. Sometimes we don't come to consensus. We ask for more information, generally, from the people who are presenting the particular ordinance that we're looking at. When we discuss it again, typically it either goes away, it doesn't come forward, that's done by consensus, or it comes forward by consensus, because we do manage to all come to agreement, to consensus, to bring this forward to the council. Again, to the council, just so the council can hear it. The council then decides whether it moves forward or not. That's what consensus means. It doesn't mean that we don't like the issue, it's a bad issue, we're not in favor of the issue. It means that we come to consensus and we think it's worth bringing it forward to the full council for a regular public discussion.
Thank you.
Question number 3. Mr. Tranche-Montang, you're going to start us off. We're going to stay in the land of subcommittee meetings or subcommittees just a moment longer. Subcommittee meetings are not televised, nor are their Zoom sessions recorded for later viewing. Would you advocate changing this policy to provide greater transparency for the public by recording them for later viewing?
Yes, 100% I'm in favor of that. We need more transparency. I've had a lot of support running for city council, and that's one of the things we keep hearing over and over again, more transparency. I think that would be wonderful. I do. I think that's the best way.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
I think transparency is the only way. I mean, again, with knowledge, if you know what everybody's talking about, or knowledge about what's going on, having videos for it and having them be able to look back and record and stuff like that to be knowledgeable on a topic, I think it just makes everything better.
Thank you. Mr. Stackpole?
The answer is yes. The subcommittees are on Zoom, so they're always available live. And I do think the subcommittees should be stored, and people should be able to view them later on. You know, the term "making the sausage," right? We're talking about transparency, and I think the more individual people, particularly those who have some real ownership in the issue that we're discussing, need to see the sausage being made. and therefore they can understand the issue. They may just understand their side of the issue, but then as the discussion moves along, they can begin to see other sides of the issue, watch the subcommittee come to consensus, and then watch the whole process. Then it comes to the full council for discussion and vote. So the answer is yes.
Okay, and to bring this one across the finish line, Mr. Termath.
And of course, the answer is yes, but I'm going to talk a little bit more on this topic, because transparency, yes, I agree with everybody sitting up here, all the candidates tonight. Transparency is important. However, when you limit the community to just a Zoom meeting, and I understand, that during a pandemic, right, there was a need for that. But when you're limiting the community on coming to a subcommittee meeting, and they're not able to attend except for at Zoom and when those meetings are held, or during working hours when other folks are working, I don't agree with that. So transparency, number one, either have it right here in the council chambers, bring it full bore, but let's get the community back involved and get their say in the matter. But yes, I'd like to have them recorded.
Great. Thank you very much for all your answers.
It's the next question first. Is it Mr. Jones? Hi. Mr. Jones, you get this one first. This is one that we ask traditionally. You're not an incumbent, but to the incumbents, please tell us about a moment or a vote during your time as a counselor that you now wish you had handled differently. To the challengers, please tell us about a vote or a situation that you feel the incumbents handled well.
That's a really good question. I would say back in June, recognizing LGBTQ, that was a tough vote I think that some people had to make, but I was in support of it. So that's one thing I think was handled well with that.
Thank you. Mr. Stackpole.
Nobody bats 1,000, right? It's World Series time or playoff time. Nobody bats 1,000, and Abraham Lincoln said that you can't please all the people all the time, but you do the best that you can. I answered this question 3 years ago. I talked about the fire marshal, the vote on the fire marshal's position, and that I regretted voting to eliminate the fire marshal's position, which we later restored. And I'm happy to say, I think in the background, I was a major player in making that happen. So there's the answer to your question. However, I think this is a group effort up here. It's a team effort. And I like to think I support the team. If you listen carefully and you weigh what the issues on the discussion, and you listen to the people, it's kind of like I used to say, an informed and educated public cannot make an incorrect decision with regard to, I use the word self-determination, but that's a big word, with regard to what's best for their community. So I think it's really a key of listening to people, listening to the discussion, making up your mind, and moving things along or not. And I think I've proven over the last 6 years I've been in the council, if not other times, that I'm good at doing that, and I believe that I'm out of time.
Thank you. Mr. Termath.
Thank you, Tammy. Honestly, every vote I've made with as much clarity as I can put towards the issue, with available information at hand, and it just comes back down to what my fellow counselor and fellow candidate tonight said, is that we do the best job that we can do, and so I stand behind every vote that I've made thus far on the council. And I've done it with having the forethought of the taxpayers and the citizenry in my mind, and knowing or having that thought of how is that going to impact them on their day-to-day lives. So I take every vote serious.
Thank you. Mr. Transmontaine?
Thank you. I believe that, could you repeat the question so I hit it right? Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I'm going to give you the challenger part because you are. To the challengers, please tell us about a vote or a situation that you feel the incumbents handled well.
Okay. I believe that the incumbents got it right to start supporting the Sanford Springvale fire departments that both need to be replaced. What a lot of people don't understand is firefighters are getting sick because there's no place for decontamination. In the 60s, when the fire department was built, it was just beginning for decontamination. For right now, modern day, they have to go in the parking lot and clean all their gear, which I find very scary for both departments, Springvale and Sanford. We need to speed that up and get them their facilities as soon as possible, financially and responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stackpole, you get this next one first. If any of you were here during the school committee segment, you were unknowingly tipped off to the next question. Do you favor eliminating the budget committee? Please explain your answer, and Mr. Stackpole, you go first.
It's a bit ironic because sitting on the city council, I voted to eliminate the budget committee. But let me explain the reason why. I've been through a lot of budget cycles here, going back to the 90s with the schools and certainly the years here. There's no easy budget cycle to go through. But historically here in Sanford, we've had no accountability, no final person that you can point to and say, that's the person over there that eliminated that position. That's the person over there that cut that line in the budget. Everybody's been able to just go like this. It's not my fault, it's his fault. The city council can now still go back and say, we didn't eliminate that from the budget. The budget committee did that. The budget committee can say it doesn't matter what we do because the city council can just override whatever our recommendations are. Eliminating the budget committee is a question of accountability to the voters. Accountability, one more time, accountability to the voters. Regarding the school committee's role doesn't change. They have the same role whether there's a budget committee or not. So let's make that point really clear. But this is about accountability. The buck will stop with the city council. You can point to me, you can point to Maura, you can point to any one of us and say, they're the ones that are responsible for doing this or for doing that. Accountability is the reason why we need to eliminate the budget committee.
Mr. Termath.
Thank you. So I have a clear understanding of exactly, why things are said the way they are, and especially when it comes to the budget committee. However, the one thing that, and yes, for us that are elected representatives, the buck stops with us, understand. However, one thing that the council is failing to recognize is that input from the citizens, okay? So you get an advisory, budget committee together, a group of citizens that want to be involved in their community, right? That's their voice, that's their input. I understand this thing got sunsetted 10 years ago, right? And we pulled that trigger a long time ago, and it took the vote out of the hands of the voter, and especially out of the residents. So it's important for the process, It's not that we're going to set a precedent. Yes, the budget's going to come to the city council, but who's going to give us the input? I mean, that budget process, yes, it's going to take a lot longer now than it had before. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Transmontagne?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm 100% in favor of keeping the budget committee. They are our experts, our volunteers, and our voters. That is a great resource to just sweep aside and throw us numbers for the budget committee. I have thick skin, and I have belief in myself if we have to make a cut, but we need to be fully educated before just looking at it and making a vote. So my stance is to keep the budget committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones?
I will keep the budget committee. We need to know where the money's going, how it's being spent. I like to be educated on things. I don't like just to have one person say, okay, we're going to do this, or just like one body. I like somebody with the actual knowledge and experience of creating the budget and knowing how to distribute the money around evenly and stuff like that. So I say we keep the budget committee and then let the city council vote. So that's where I stand on it.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Termath, what in city government needs to change, and how will you work to change it? What in city government needs to change?
Well, I definitely have to say, first and foremost, that's, how we conduct business amongst ourselves, okay? With the civility, with the respect, with dignity that everybody that sits up here at these seats, deserves. However, we need to bring the temperature down, right, when it comes amongst ourselves. So, with that being said, I'd be working more towards, getting everybody's input. We're not going to agree all the time, but at the same time, having disagreements is good for the process. That's democratic. That's what we need, and to engage our citizenry, find a way, not just say that nobody's showing up, but find a way to re-engage with the community. And if they won't come to us, then we'll go to them. So, and that's what I'll be working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trenchmontagne?
Yes. Thank you. I believe how to make the city government more efficient is to, one, preserve the two-year, two-term mayoral limits. I'm a big proponent of keeping that. Also, and this is a good one, I'd like to create a reasonable city council term limits for the seat that I seek. Everybody that has signed my nomination papers told me flat out, this is great, fresh faces, new ideas, new insights. Everybody wants, again, small business friendly in town. And again, we have to support, like the fire department coming out, responsible. We have to support our local departments. I've been meeting with different department heads, and one of the directors, it was going great, and all of a sudden got quiet, and I asked, what's wrong? She goes, thank you. You're the first councilor to come visit me since I've been director for 2 years now. So we need more transparency. We need to meet up with all city departments once a month, and I have commitments for most department heads. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Yes. What in city government needs to change, and how would you work to change it?
We need to change getting involved in the community more. I've been walking around Walmart, the parks, everywhere, just asking people what they would like to see different in Sanford. They told me about their problems, their issues and stuff like that. And just, from not feeling safe to not having businesses here to not having anything for families to do. I've come up with just random things that I was able to just think of when people tell me this stuff. I talked to one lady at my event last Saturday. She said she didn't feel safe walking around, stuff like that. So I'm thinking about just having a walking group on the week, during the week or whatever. There's another person who doesn't have transportation. We need to look at expanding the transportation here, the bus line and stuff like that. Since a lot of people losing jobs, stuff like that, and housing, we can actually help people get to where they need to get to their jobs and stuff like that. So I think we need just to start listening to the community and getting involved with them and seeing what they really want.
Thank you. Mr. Stackpole.
So I'm going to answer the question, but I want to start back with the Budget Committee because I want to make the point because it's not clear. Nothing changes. The Budget Committee isn't there, but the same presentation, the same level of public input that exists now with the Budget Committee just falls on the City Council's shoulders. It's exactly the same process. Okay, so now we're back to how can we make government more efficient. Government moves too damn slow. There's things we're just getting to now that I worked on 6 years ago, and things are just happening. City government works too damn slow. In 2010, when we revised the charter, I was the chair of the charter committee. We incorporated the town of Sanford to the city of Sanford in order to make it run more efficiently. And that's been the goal, the strive to run more efficiently. Do you realize how much time it takes for everyone, schools, superintendent, business manager, all the department heads, to go through the budget twice, 3 nights? They go through it twice. We don't need to waste their time doing that. We need to eliminate the Budget Committee, continue to make government more efficient and run more efficiently, and continue having the transparency and also the accountability to make everything work. So the word is, how do we make government run better? It's efficiently, and we need to continue to make things run more efficiently.
Thank you.
Okay. The final question of the evening, not just this segment, but of the night. And it comes to us from a resident who submitted it to us for our consideration. And Mr. Tranchmontang, you get to lead the way on this one. Here we go. Do you envision giving single-family homeowners any relief from recent tax increases? And if you do, how can that be accomplished?
That's a great question. I would love to be able to give single-family homeowners tax relief. Again, I would have to have more experience on the city budget to see how we could help them, see if there's programs, if that's what the question you're asking me. Pretty much, that's my answer, you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
I definitely would. It's tough for a household with 2 incomes to survive in this climate. So a single household, I would totally support a little tax break. How we go about it, again, that's how we have to come together as a council and figure out how we're going to do it, find where the money's going to come from to actually fund it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stackpole?
You know, death and taxes, right? Those are the 2 things we're short of in life. Nobody likes taxes. I don't like taxes. I don't like paying my taxes. I'm on a fixed income. I own property here in Sanford. My tax bill went up just like everybody else's tax bill went up. But you walk around and ask people, what services do you not want? What do we take out? Nobody wants any services cut, but they don't like paying for them either. And that's life. I mean, I could say I'm the same way. I don't want to cut my trash pickup or reduce police service or something like that in order to lower taxes. I want to live in a safe, healthy, clean community. So, but I think if you look at your tax bill this year, you'll see that the mill rate went down. Okay? The mill rate went down. Taxes were reduced. The mill rate, taxes. Unfortunately, we had a firestorm in property valuations, and everybody's valuation went up. And that's where the tax bill went up. That's where your tax bill went up. Also, I believe the county share went up also. It hadn't gone up for many years. We were budgeting a flat amount for that, and then this year we were kind of surprised that they went up. So I think that from the city council perspective, we can't control valuations. We can't control county taxes. We can control the mill rate. And I think we've done a good job. We can do a better job. But the mill rate went down. And so we are keeping all these things in mind and helping people.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Termath.
Thanks, Shawn. So yeah, you know, it all ultimately comes down to the mill rate, and having that, you know, that ability for us to be able to watch that, and you know, the state of Maine does a wonderful job when it comes to the fact that, you know, they do give a lot of breaks to, you know, struggling homeowners, right? One of the great bills that was passed was the Homestead Act, you know, for helping our seniors 65 and over. Okay? So, but, you know, when it comes to the council level, you know, it's just a matter of watching that mill rate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, the elevator pitch. Mr. Jones, 2 minutes to speak directly to voters and say to them whatever you would like. Please begin.
I would like to say, I moved here about 4 years ago. As soon as I got here, I immediately joined committees here in Sanford because when I moved to the community, I just loved it that much. I just wanted to be a part of the rise of Sanford. It has so much potential here. That's one of the reasons I moved here. I set up shop and just bought a house and moved to Sanford just because of the potential that we have here. And I want to be a part of that, making this the destination of Maine. There's no reason why Sanford should not be the place everybody envies here in Maine. We have the storefronts where we might not be on the turnpike, but we have access. You have to come through Sanford to go to the turnpike. We need to capitalize on that, and we need to bring the businesses here. And I have lots of ideas, and that's not really going to cost too much money, but will cost some money to do. But it all involves community. I want to get the community involved. One of the ideas I have is getting with the high school welding program and have the senior class create a actual sculpture and donate to the city of Sanford. With that, we're showcasing our technical school. We're giving the kids a sense of pride. We're giving them something on the resume and stuff like that. And with Sanford, we put those sculptures on the actual trails and advertise it as "Come walk the art trails of Sanford." I mean, little things like that. We can utilize what we have to make our place better and to modernize it and to draw people and business here to Sanford.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stackpole.
Vote for Oliver Jones.
I'm sure as you've traveled around Sanford and Springvale, you've noticed the ridiculous sign wars that are taking place on our streets. I'm reminded of my late friend and council colleague, John Tuttle, who would say to me, "You know, Bob, signs don't vote." And I would also add that size doesn't matter. So why am I going on about signs? Because signs cost money. When candidates take money, they become beholden to that group of donors or political party. In short, money comes with expectations. If those expectations are not met, then that money and other forms of support will not be forthcoming when it's time for re-election. Already within the current council membership, there is a councilor who has received a death threat because of the way he voted on an issue. It's time to ask ourselves, is this the type of community we want to live in? On my signs, it says "paid for by candidate." In local elections, I have never taken 1 penny from any group or political party. During the 21 years you have elected and re-elected me to work for you as your representative, I have only been beholden to you, the people of Sanford and Springvale. And I still have work to do. There's work to be done in economic development, road repair, safe housing, new housing, cleaning up the mill yard, attracting new businesses to our community to reduce the tax burden on single-family homeowners. But I can't do this without your vote. So if you want a representative on your city council who has the experience to get things done and will represent your needs and is not beholden to anyone else, I ask for your vote to continue to allow me the privilege of representing you on your city council.
Thank you. Mr. Termath.
Thank you. And once again, appreciate everybody coming out tonight, all the citizens participating here in the council chambers, but also viewing at home on YouTube. Once again, my name is Michael Termath, and it's been an honor and a blessing for me to be sitting up here on this council. I've been sitting on this council representing the taxpayer, the constituents, the people that I go out and I meet with on a daily basis, that I talk with. I answer your phone calls. I take your questions. I'm listening. I'm here. I've met people for coffee, and it's been wonderful. There's been a lot of, folks that have disagreed, but that's Sanford, right? That's the process. However, there is much more work that needs to be done, right? Working with economic growth development, working with, DPW to fix our roads, to continue to do the improvements that we've already started, and to make Sanford the place that families want to come to, thrive and grow and raise a family. But we need jobs, and we need businesses to come and reinvest themselves, re-engage in our community. So I'm asking for your vote November 8th so that I can continue to do the work that I started in June. And I'm blessed and humbled to have your vote, so please vote for Michael Termath November 8th. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Tranchmontang.
Thank you. For the past several years, I have been asked to run for city council for the seat. The timing was never right, but after watching the current administration this past summer trying to change the mayoral term limits from 2 years, 2 terms to 4 years, that alarmed me. This would have changed the entire city charter, in my opinion, and my vote, my supporters. I'm against this. There was no need to bring that and change this. The system works just fine the way it is. So the following Friday, after I watched this on YouTube, I decided to run for city council. And 7 days later, I had 98 signatures, and I knocked on not one door. I only went where I was asked, or everybody came to our house. The voters are angry, feeling like they don't matter. And that's the thing that I kept hearing. So I figured I should run. It's time to run for fresh faces, new ideas, new insights. And I do want to open up Sanford's roads for business. I do think that's a huge disadvantage to our city over others that we compared to. And again, I want to stress that I do want to help create term limits for the city council seat. And again, that'll restore fresh faces, new people running for office. I think this is a good thing for Sanford. I have commitments, like I said earlier, for most department heads to meet once a month, either at a local restaurant for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, whatever we decide on, for more transparency. And I think that would help run the city fluidly. So I would appreciate if you would vote for me, especially if you would like to have fresh faces. And I'm a lifelong citizen of Sanford. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Shawn, Tammy, and Emily, and everybody attending. Thank you very much.
Excellent. There it is.
Thank you very much.
We are finished. Tammy, is there anything you'd like to say? Tammy's ready to go home? We all are. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We appreciate you being here. And everybody, please remember to vote November 8th. Thank you, and we'll see you next year.
See you next time.
Thank you.